Welcome to Reddit Stories Podcast. I'm Mr. Redder. In today's story, OP just wanted to enjoy their McDonald's french fries until a wild Karen appeared and things got crazy real quick. These are some of the funniest Reddit stories we've ever read. Let's get right into it. Karen freaks out after I refuse to share my McDonald's fries. I was just trying to enjoy my meal. That was all. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Just a quiet afternoon at McDonald's, sitting by the window with a tray of hot, golden fries and a cold drink. The restaurant wasn't too busy, just a few scattered customers, the usual mix of parents with kids, workers on lunch breaks, and the occasional teenager glued to their phone. I had found a perfect spot near the play area, not too close to the chaos, but close enough to watch the kids run around like they had unlimited energy. A few minutes into my meal, I noticed a boy, maybe around 6 years old, standing a few feet away from me. He wasn't playing. He wasn't looking for his parents. He was staring directly at my fries. His wide eyes locked onto them like they were the most important thing in the world. I took another bite, pretending not to notice, but I could feel him staring into my soul. Then, without hesitation, he took a step forward. "Can I have some?" he asked, his voice small but confident. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a monster. If a kid is actually hungry, I'd have no problem helping out. But that wasn't the case. His mom had just bought him a Happy Meal minutes ago. I had seen her set it down at a table nearby. This kid wasn't starving. He just wanted my fries. I gave him a polite smile. "Sorry, buddy, these are mine." The boy's face scrunched up in frustration. He let out a loud, exaggerated sigh and stomped back toward the play area. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. Less than a minute later, I heard heavy footsteps approaching. I looked up, and there she was, a woman in her mid-30s, marching straight towards me with a scowl that could curdle milk. She had that signature Karen haircut, oversized sunglasses perched on her head, and a purse clutched tight like she was ready to throw it at someone. Her son trailed behind her, smirking like he had just summoned a boss battle in a video game. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with fake politeness. "Did you just refuse to share with my son?" I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah? I mean, these are my fries." Her lips pursed like she just sucked on a lemon. "He's just a kid. What kind of adult refuses to share food with a kid?" I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. "Ma'am, he has his own food. I saw you buy him a Happy Meal." "He already ate his nuggies," she snapped. "He just wanted a few fries. You have plenty." I glanced at my tray. Sure, I had a decent portion left, but that wasn't the point. I paid for these. I'd like to eat them myself. Her face turned a shade of red I didn't know was possible. "Wow, just wow. You must be real proud of yourself, refusing a hungry kid a few fries. Unbelievable." At this point, people were starting to stare. A couple sitting nearby exchanged amused glances, and one of the cashiers behind the counter was clearly eavesdropping, probably waiting to see if this would escalate. "Look," I said, keeping my voice calm, "I'm just trying to eat in peace. Your son asked, I said no. That should be the end of it." Karen wasn't having it. She let out an exasperated huff and turned towards the counter. "I need to speak to the manager. This person is harassing my kid." That got everyone's attention. The cashier I had noticed earlier quickly ducked into the kitchen, probably to fetch the manager before things got worse. A few moments later, a middle-aged man in a McDonald's uniform emerged, looking like he had dealt with this kind of nonsense one too many times. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who had seen far too many public meltdowns. Karen immediately launched into a rant. "This horrible person refused to share with my child. My son was just politely asking for a few fries, and they were incredibly rude to him. I don't feel safe eating here if these are the kind of people you allow." The manager slowly turned his head towards me. I could tell he was already over it. "Sir, is this true?" I shrugged. Her kid asked for my fries. I said no. That's it. The manager sighed and turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, we can't force customers to share their food. If you'd like to buy another order of fries, I'd be happy to assist you." Karen's mouth fell open like she couldn't believe she wasn't getting her way. "So, you're just going to let him be cruel to my son?" "Ma'am," the manager said, his patience hanging on by a thread, "either you buy more fries or you stop harassing other customers." Karen looked around, probably hoping someone would back her up, but all she got were stares and barely contained laughter. Realizing she had lost, she let out a final dramatic scoff and stormed off, dragging her son behind her. As she passed, she shot me one last glare. "You should be ashamed." I popped a fry into my mouth. "Tastes fine to me." The manager gave me a nod before heading back behind the counter. The couple nearby chuckled. "That was wild," one of them said. I just shook my head, returning to my meal. Some people really think the world owes them everything, including other people's fries. Our next story is about a real-life psychic who has real psychic powers. Or does she? Ooh, this one sounds good. I finally let my friend's aunt give me a psychic reading. Now she doesn't like me anymore and won't be doing it again. I've always been skeptical about psychics, but my friend's aunt, Gina, swore she had a gift. She had been doing readings for years, and every time I visited my friend, Gina would offer to read my energy, do a card spread, or connect with my spirit guides. I always politely declined, not because I was afraid, but because I just didn't buy into it. But Gina? She took her self-proclaimed abilities very seriously. She talked about them constantly, claimed to have foreseen major events, and insisted that she could tell when people were lying or hiding something. It was her whole personality. My friend had told me stories of Gina's readings, how she would dramatically gasp and clutch her chest when making a startling discovery, or how she would close her eyes and sway as if spirits were whispering in her ears. Some people in the family humored her, but others, like my friend, saw it as harmless entertainment. Still, Gina held firm in her belief that she was truly gifted, and it was almost impossible to have a conversation with her without her slipping in something mystical. One evening during a family gathering at my friend's house, Gina cornered me in the kitchen while I was refilling my drink. "I feel such strong energy from you," she said, her eyes narrowing as she studied my face. "You're very guarded. You have walls up, but I could help you. I could do a reading." I smiled politely. "I don't know, Gina. I'm not really into that kind of thing." She let out a soft chuckle, shaking her head. "Oh, sweetie, that's exactly what people say when they're scared of what they might find out." Now, that was just too good to pass up. She had set herself up perfectly. "You know what?" I said, feigning hesitation. "All right, let's do this." Gina's eyes lit up. She quickly grabbed my hands and led me to the dining room, where she kept a small velvet bag of cards. My friend shot me a look from across the room, half amused, half concerned. I gave her a quick wink before turning my attention back to Gina, who was already shuffling the cards with an air of reverence. She spread the cards out and had me pick 3. As she flipped them over one by one, she gasped dramatically. "Oh my, this is powerful." I leaned in. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "The letter J is coming through. Does that mean anything to you?" I widened my eyes. "Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. J is such an important letter in my life." Gina's excitement grew. "I knew it. And I see water? A lake maybe? Or an ocean? Does that have any significance?" I nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. I was just thinking about a lake the other day." She gasped again, pressing her hand to her heart. I feel a loss. Someone you cared for deeply. Someone who has passed. They want to send you a message. Do you know who I'm talking about?" I sucked in a breath and nodded solemnly. "Yes. Oh wow. This is crazy." Gina was hooked. She kept going, feeding me vague suggestions, and I kept playing along, adding ridiculous details that somehow made her even more convinced. When she mentioned a pet, I told her about my childhood iguana, Sir Lizardington III, who had sadly perished in a dramatic escape attempt. When she asked if I had a special connection to birds, I clutched my chest and whispered, "Yes, my great-grandfather was raised by hawks. It's a huge part of our family history." Gina hesitated for a moment, but the excitement in my voice must have reassured her because she nodded vigorously. Yes, I see that now. He's here. He's watching over you." I gasped. "That's amazing. We still do hawk calls at family reunions in his honor." Her smile faltered. "Hawk calls?" I nodded. "Yes, we gather in a circle and whistle into the sky, waiting for a response." There was a long pause. Gina blinked rapidly, her hands slowly falling to the table. The enthusiasm drained from her face as she started piecing things together. The longer I kept nodding, the more I could see her internal struggle, wanting to believe her own abilities, but slowly realizing I was messing with her. She took a shaky breath. You're just making all of this up, aren't you? I burst into laughter. Gee, you think? Gina's entire demeanor changed. The excitement was gone, replaced by pure disappointment. She let out a heavy sigh and shook her head. Oh, I think you should leave. I stood up, still grinning. Thanks for the reading, Gina. That was truly enlightening. She didn't respond. She just waved me away with a defeated hand. As I walked back into the living room, my friend was practically doubled over with laughter. You really went all in, didn't you? I had to, I said, popping a chip into my mouth. I think she might actually retire after this. From that day on, Gina never offered me a reading again. I'd like to think that she learned a valuable lesson about cold reading, but knowing her, she probably just decided my energy was too chaotic to be read properly. Poor Gina. I can't be the only one who feels kind of bad for her. Yeah, as funny as that was, my heart goes out to her. Maybe we can drop some crystal ball emojis in the comments for Gina? Hold on, let me check if is there a crystal ball? Yeah, there is. It looks really cool too. I'm gonna start using that one. Crystal balls in the comments for Gina. Come on, let's see how many we can get. My family keeps excluding me from important moments, and I finally had enough. I'm 34 female. I have two sisters who I'll call Sally, who's 31, and B, who's 28. I've always considered myself close to both of them, or at least I thought I was. B got married a few years ago and had been struggling with fertility issues for quite some time. When she and her husband finally conceived through IVF, I was beyond ecstatic for her. I knew how much this meant to her, and I wanted to support her every step of the way. However, there have been moments throughout the years where I felt deliberately left out of important family events. It started small, but over time it became more noticeable. For example, when B graduated, I was the only family member who never received an invitation. When I later asked why, she simply said, I didn't think you'd want to go. That hurt, but I let it go, assuming it was an oversight. Then when our grandfather passed, our family organized a big gathering a few days later to honor him. I was, once again, the only one not invited. When I confronted them about it, I got the same response. We didn't think you'd want to come. Despite these repeated incidents, I continued to brush things off, convincing myself that they weren't intentionally excluding me. Then came B's baby shower. She scheduled it on a day when she knew I had a prior commitment and wouldn't be able to attend. That one stung more than the others because it felt deliberate. Even though I was upset, I still wanted to be supportive. I put together a beautiful hamper filled with things I had been picking out for months. Baby clothes, essentials, and even a handmade blanket that one of our aunts, who had recently passed, had knitted for my own son when I was pregnant 6 years ago. I thought it would be a meaningful gift. I dropped it off at my parents' house for B and wished her well. Throughout her pregnancy, B made it clear that on the day she gave birth, she only wanted our parents and her husband's parents at the hospital. She also mentioned that she and her husband wanted the first 24 hours at home with no visitors so their dog could adjust to the baby first. I completely respected that, and I told her I would be available whenever she was ready for visitors. The night before her scheduled C-section, I spoke to B and reassured her that my workday was light. I told her that if she needed anything, she knew where to reach me, and I couldn't wait to hear the good news. We didn't know the baby's gender, so I was extra excited for the big reveal. On the day of the delivery, around 1 p.m., I received a Facebook video call from B and my dad. They introduced me to my beautiful new nephew. My heart swelled with joy, and I was overwhelmed with happiness for them. Then, in the middle of our conversation, a nurse came into the room and B handed the phone over to my mom. That's when my happiness turned to devastation. My mom casually mentioned that Sally was at the hospital. I felt my stomach drop. I immediately asked why I hadn't been invited. My mom hesitated before saying, "Well, you were working, so we didn't think you'd be able to come." I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. My voice shook as I explained that I could have easily left work. If I had been told, I would have asked my manager, who would have absolutely let me take the afternoon off for such an important event. But instead, they had made that decision for me. They were all together, experiencing one of the most beautiful moments of our family's life, and once again, I was the only one left out. Tears welled up in my eyes as I told my mom I had to go. I hung up, completely shattered. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone in disbelief. How many times was I going to be excluded from family moments before they realized how much it hurt? It wasn't an accident anymore. It was a pattern. I removed myself from the family group chat. I needed space. My emotions were raw, and I wasn't ready to pretend like everything was fine. When I told my manager what had happened, she was shocked. She reassured me that she absolutely would have let me leave early to be there, and that my family had made that choice without even giving me the option. Later, I messaged my mom and told her how deeply hurt I was. Her response, "I'm sorry you feel that way." That was it. No acknowledgement of their actions, no apology for excluding me, just a dismissive phrase that made it clear she didn't see why I was so upset. When I told my manager about my mom's response, she shook her head and said, "That's gaslighting. Your feelings are valid." And now I can't stop replaying everything in my head. Was I overreacting? Was I being too sensitive? Or is my pain justified? Am I the jerk for hanging up on my family and stepping back after being excluded yet again? Not the jerk. This isn't about one missed event. It's a consistent pattern of your family excluding you. My girlfriend's male friend showed up with gifts on Valentine's Day, and now things feel off. We were getting ready to go out for the day. The front door was open, and my girlfriend suddenly said, "Oh, X is here. Come on in, X." A man walked in, someone I had never met before, but I knew his name. He had been her friend for almost 10 years. He seemed slightly nervous as he stepped inside, holding a box of chocolates and a handwritten card with her name on it, followed by the word love. The whole thing just felt surreal. My girlfriend seemed a bit flustered as well. She introduced me to him as her boyfriend, but the tension in the air was undeniable. He lingered longer than I felt was necessary, close to 20 minutes, making small talk while my girlfriend seemed to avoid eye contact with me. I kept my cool, watching their interaction closely. Something about his demeanor struck me as odd, like he had planned this moment for a long time and didn't expect me to be there. Finally, he left, and we headed out as well. Once we got in the car, I couldn't hold it in anymore. That was weird. What was that all about? I asked, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. She shrugged, acting like it was no big deal. "Oh, that's just X. He probably does that for other girls too." I frowned. That didn't feel like something casual. It seemed romantic in nature. He looked nervous, and you did too. It was almost like he had no idea you even had a boyfriend. She sighed and rolled her eyes. "You're overreacting. He's just a friend. He's always been that way." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Look, I don't want to start a fight, but I don't understand why he wouldn't know about me. You've known him for almost a decade, and the fact that he just stops by unannounced, hands you chocolates and a card with love written on it, that doesn't strike you as odd?" She tensed up and suddenly turned the whole conversation around on me. "So what? You don't trust me now? You think I'm hiding something?" Her tone was defensive, as if I had just accused her of something I hadn't even said. I shook my head. "I didn't say that. I just think his behavior is strange, and I'm trying to understand why you don't see that. If he was just a friend, wouldn't he at least know you had a boyfriend, and wouldn't he call before stopping by?" That set her off. What started as a calm discussion turned into a full-blown argument. She kept saying I was insecure and reading too much into things, while I stood my ground that something about that situation felt off. The fact that she was more upset about me questioning it than about how uncomfortable it made me feel only added to my frustration. By the time we got to our destination, things were tense between us. She barely spoke for the rest of the day, and I could tell she was still fuming. I, on the other hand, was left with this nagging feeling that I had just witnessed something I wasn't supposed to see, something that had forced her into an awkward position. Now things are on the rocks, and I don't know if I handled this the right way. Was it wrong of me to bring this up? Should I have just let it go? Or was I right to question why this guy, after almost 10 years of friendship, didn't even know she was in a relationship? Bro, he showed up unannounced on Valentine's Day with chocolates and a handwritten card with love on it? That is the very definition of hella sus. Like you said, they both appeared nervous, and she never told him she had a boyfriend? How long have you guys been together? The fact that he stayed 20 minutes despite seeing that the happy couple was about to head out for the holidays says that he wasn't happy you were there. Lastly, I don't like her reaction at all. A scene like that plays out in front of you on Valentine's Day, and she feels the need to get nasty and defensive? A good girlfriend who is truly innocent would have taken the time to explain and alleviate your fears, because she would be aware of how bad it looked. Hope you're not too attached to her, because it sounds to me like this relationship is about to finish running its course. My Karen wife is demanding my daughter's college fund be given to her son. I, 39 male, am a father to my daughter who's 18. Let's call her Emma. My first wife and I were middle school sweethearts. Emma was a happy accident and we were thrilled to be parents to her. But my wife passed while giving birth to her. I had just graduated and started a job and I failed to juggle a kid in the career. So I remarried in a year and a half to my second wife, who's 42. Let's call her Sam. She was also struggling raising her son, Tom, due to financial difficulties. It was a marriage of convenience and we were very open about that. She would be stay at home raising both kids while I would provide financially for them. There were ups and downs along the road, but we made it work. Sam always gave her son preferential treatment, as in emotionally, which I never took issue with. After all, she was my daughter and not hers. But I always provided equally for both of them, because I always felt obligated to be fair with both of them. There were not any major issues growing up. Both kids maintained a healthy relationship with each other while maintaining a bit of distance. Both care for each other, and we never asked for more. My first wife and I both had an insurance policy. It was paid out when she passed. For some reason, we once randomly talked about what we would do with the money if one of us had passed. We both decided it would go to our kids, and if we didn't have a kid, then the surviving spouse should travel the world. I've kept that money in a trust that has grown over the age of 17 years and has been yielding significant profits, and now it's quite a bit of money. I've never borrowed even a penny from it because it belongs to my daughter and I'm just the guardian. This year, both kids applied to college and Emma got into an Ivy League school with a full scholarship. Our plan was if Emma did not get the scholarship, I would pay her tuition with the trust. Tom also applied for Ivy League and got admission but no scholarship. He and I both discussed our options, and I told her that while I can help him with living expenses while he pursues his studies, I can't afford the tuition without getting a massive hit. He was understanding, and he said that he'll take out a loan for it. It was settled then, or at least I thought it was. One night, Sam asked me if I can pay her son's tuition with the payout. She knows the width of that policy. I was startled for a second, but I said I would think about it. I delayed it because I wanted to ask Emma whether she wanted to help Tom out, because I've always let her make decisions on her own, as I feel it's the important part of parenting. I wanted to ask her alone without Sam present because Sam can be quite a bit pushy, and I wanted Emma to make a decision on her own without any pressure because she's the sweetest kid who would rather be hurt than hurt anyone else. I explained the whole thing to my daughter and I asked what she wants to do. She asked me what I think she should do, and I told her that I have no opinion, but no matter what decision she makes, it will not change anything between us. She will always be my world. She told me that she wanted to travel the world with me, as her mom wanted, with half of the money, and invest the rest so she can have extra cash flow. She asked me for the weekend to think about it, which I was happy to give her. On the weekend, she texted me to come into her room. She asked me to explain the profit yields, the amount, and everything related to the amount, which I did. After contemplating, she decided that she can pay for half of Tom's tuition while touring the world and maintaining healthy cash flow. I stressed on her that if she doesn't want to do it, she doesn't have to. Tom is not her responsibility, but she said she wanted to help out her brother. During a family meeting, she told this to Tom in front of Sam and I. Tom teared up and hugged her, and he was very grateful. I noticed Sam was a bit off, but I ignored it. We all went out for dinner. In bed, Sam asked me who decided about Tom's tuition. I told her about the whole situation. Sam was shocked for whatever reason. She said that I didn't have to ask Emma, and I could have made the decision on my own, as it wasn't Emma's money. I told her in plain words that she does not get a say in that, since it was decided between me and Emma's mother what we would do with the money. Then she said, why didn't I involve her during the discussions with Emma? And by this time, I was on the edge, and I told her because it was none of her darn business. She said that she would talk to Emma, and Emma can pay for her brother's full tuition, and traveling the world is not necessary. I calmly, yet firmly told her that she would not say a word to Emma about this, and the matter is closed. After a week, I was out with my colleagues when I received a text from Tom that I should come home immediately. I rushed home. I was there in 10 minutes. Sam was shouting at Emma how she should pay for Tom's tuition, and Emma was crying. Tom was trying to calm his mother down and to get her to shut up, but to no avail. I told her to stop and go to her bedroom as politely as I could because I didn't want to insult her in front of Tom, because after all, she is his mother. I picked Emma up and was taking her to her room when I heard Sam yell, "You were always a monster. You ended your mother while coming into this world." And this was the end point. I told Sam that I'm going out and I will come back in 2 days and she better be gone when I get back. I took Emma with me and asked Tom if he wanted to come with us. Tom was reluctant, but eventually came with us. I drove them to nearby Hilltown and got us checked in. Emma was crying all the way, and I just let her after a few initial tries to calm her down. The next morning when we had breakfast, Emma had still been crying, and Tom basically got on his knees and apologized for his mother's behavior. Emma told him that it wasn't his fault. We three had a heart-to-heart discussion once Emma and I had talked in privacy, where Emma was reassured that she wasn't responsible for anything. Emma will still be paying half of Tom's tuition. I also talked to Tom and told him that I would be divorcing his mother, and there's no turning back from that. But that doesn't have to change my relationship with him unless he thinks otherwise. He asked me to consider my decision, and I asked him if what I was doing was unfair. He said no, and he understood. By the time we got home, my parents were already there and Sam was gone. My parents asked about what had happened, and apparently, Sam had only fed them half the story, and I told them the whole thing. They were furious, but tried to lower the temperature and asked if there was any way to make amends. I told them that my decision is final. I've served Sam with papers with a fair amount of alimony, along with a one-bedroom apartment since she made our home while I worked, despite the prenup, which eliminated any prospects of alimony or division of assets. In the meantime, our relatives and friends have been asking me to reconsider it. While they do not condone what happened, they want me to make space for her. Sam also reached out to Emma and apologized for her behavior. Emma asked me to reconsider my decision as she has forgiven Sam and feels like there won't be any friction since she has already left for college. I am not willing to roll back because whatever affection I had for Sam is gone. I don't think it will ever be the same if we get back together, and there's no changing this lack of feelings for her. So I'm asking objective and impartial Redditors for any advice on what to do here. Yikes! A few things stick out to me. Marriage of convenience? Sam didn't really have a bond with Emma. Sam always favored her son. Sam thinking Emma had no say over her inheritance. How Sam berated Emma despite her generous offer to pay for half of an Ivy League school. Then the topper, what Sam said about her mom. Some things can never be taken back. Sam doesn't seem like a very caring person. I think you're doing the right thing and very generous offering alimony. After what Sam said to your daughter, I would divorce her. Seriously, you're your daughter's only living parent. She relies on you to defend her in all things. Sam showed her true colors over money that wasn't even hers. Let her go. You don't need that in your and Emma's life. I'm going to jail in 7 hours. What's something I should do before I go? It's only for a month, but I feel like there's something I'm not remembering. I've unplugged appliances and such, done my laundry and cleaned up. I took the trash out, made sure my bills are good until I'm out. No food that's going to expire while I'm gone. Is there anything simple that I may have forgotten? Update. Hi everyone, I'm back. I'll do a detailed update after work, but overall it was boring. I have plenty more to share, but all in all, 2 out of 10, don't recommend. I'll start off by saying jail is not very fun, that's for sure. So after I made this post, before it blew up, I did a last check of my apartment, made sure my bills were good, and I got someone to check on my place. My sister came by and picked me up around noon. We did some fun things and went to watch Across the Spider-Verse, which was really good. After that, we hit up the Wendy's by the jail for my proverbial last supper. Honestly, I was very anxious, so I had to pretty much force myself to eat it, but I'm glad I did. I turned myself in at exactly 6 p.m. to the jail. Initially, they didn't even know I was supposed to show up, but they got that squared away pretty quickly. First, they had me sign some paperwork and get a little medical checkup, just vitals and some questions. Next, they had me take a shower. They gave me some anti-lice shampoo that made my scalp and body incredibly cold. Next, they gave me my jail clothes and had me go through a full body scan to make sure I wasn't carrying anything I shouldn't be. They give orange jumpsuits to inmates who have been arrested but are waiting court, gray to inmates who have been sentenced, me, and white clothes to the workers. Workers have their clothes and towels changed out every day, while everyone else got them switched on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. They also gave us new clothes on Sundays. After I was dressed and clean enough, they sent me back to the intake dorm, so to speak. This was a room with 24 cells in it, 12 on top, 12 on bottom. There was a common area with 6 tables and a TV, as well as a pull-up bar that you could also do dips on. This specific jail doesn't have outside recreation time anymore because the state says a pull-up bar is enough to count as recreation time. So basically, I was inside a room with nearly no windows for my sentence. My cell here was about 12 feet long and 7 feet wide. It had a sink, toilet, and a desk in it. The bed was a metal rack with about an inch of foam to lay on. We didn't get pillows, but we got 2 sheets and a wool blanket that was very itchy. I used the wool blanket as my pillow and covered up with a sheet, while using the other sheet to act as a barrier between me and the foam. Luckily for me, I'm a very warm sleeper because the jail was kept very cold at all times. Since the intake dorm is a medium security block, we had it locked down in our cells from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. as well as 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day. At 6 a.m. sharp, they turn all the lights on and announce "head count" on the speaker. This means I had to get out of my bed and go stand by the cell door while the guards came around and made sure that no one escaped overnight. If you didn't get out of bed, they locked you in your cell for 24 hours until the next morning. After that, I would lay back down and try to sleep until breakfast came at 7. Breakfast was generally cereal with milk, peanut butter with toast, and either apple or orange juice. The food menu was the same every week. After breakfast, I always went back to my cell to lay down and try to get some more sleep, but the intake dorm was incredibly loud. People couldn't seem to have a conversation without yelling. People were playing dominoes and cards from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., slapping them on the table. No one had any respect for other people, basically because it's a bunch of literal criminals who just got to jail. Not to mention how bright the lights were. What I'm saying is, there wasn't many nap opportunities in that block. Since I couldn't sleep much, I read my books. Library was every Wednesday morning. Luckily, my first morning there. Could check out 4 books. Brushed up on my spades, learned how to play tonk, played a bit of poker too. I played some chess and lost a game to an old man. I was thinking all day about how bad I wanted to play him again, only for him to get released right after dinner. I still want that rematch, Randy. Sometime before lunch, I would shower. In this dorm, there were 2 separate single-person showers. They were very small and way too hot. Don't even think about stepping foot in there without your sandals on. Also, don't touch the walls or the curtain. Basically, don't touch anything but the button that makes the water come out. The showers were nastier than any shower I've had to use in my many years playing hockey. Now, I went in on a Tuesday night and immediately put in a commissary order of shampoo, conditioner, soap, toothpaste, some ramen, candy. You get it, the essentials. I got all of that on Thursday morning, which was nice, until I realized I forgot to buy deodorant. Yay. I'm very serious about my personal hygiene, and commissary didn't come again until the next Tuesday, so that was a rough week for me. Honestly, it didn't make much of a difference since half of the people in there didn't shower or brush their teeth at all, making the dorm smell unique, to put it lightly. The toothbrush they give to the inmates is a grand total of 2 inches long, which wasn't very effective. The reason is so no weapons can be made with it. But they also gave us a very long spoon that could be used to hurt someone, so I call BS. Anyway, after all that, lunch came around noon. We would eat and lounge about some more until 1 p.m. when they locked us in our cells. From 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. it was generally pretty quiet since everyone was in their own space, so naturally I slept as much as I could, because why would I want to be conscious in jail when I don't have to be? When 3 p.m. came around, they did head count again, and again, if you weren't fully dressed by your cell door, they would lock you in your cell for 24 hours. I never had this happen, but I sure witnessed it happening plenty. Usually it was because someone was withdrawing or something, and they were understandably depressed about being incarcerated. After that, we would do the same crap, just waiting around until more food came. Dinner was sometime between 5:30 and 6. I guess I'll post the food menu here since you're all wanting to know. I'll preface by saying that the county jail that I went to has a reputation, unbeknownst to me, for actually having good food compared to other jails in my state. I would compare it to the school lunches I got in high school. Not amazing, but it was edible, and for that, I feel lucky. So here's the menu. Monday, breakfast, sausage and cheese McMuffin, delicious. Hash brown, juice, milk. Lunch, mac and cheese, not bad. Either cucumber salad or zucchini and milk. Dinner, sloppy joe with a biscuit, peas and carrots, bread and butter. And each day of the week we had different things on the menu. Some of them were pretty good, but some of them weren't very good at all. All of the meat was turkey or chicken. After dinner, we did a whole lot of nothing until 9 p.m. when they locked us down. My block actually had one inmate who was waiting to be sentenced on an arson charge and who was considered dangerous, so he wasn't allowed around other inmates and was on 23-hour lockdown. His 1 hour of free time was from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. when we were all locked in our cells, and this guy was crazy. Anyway, at 10 p.m. they turn the lights off, but it never actually gets dark in jail. This posed a problem for me because I have serious trouble falling asleep as it is, so I would read until I got sleepy enough, then use my shirt to cover my eyes and doze off. Usually I was pretty hungry at bedtime, so I would eat a ramen before I brushed my teeth. There wasn't a microwave in the intake dorm, so I would fill my bowl of noodles with warm water until the noodles get soft. Then I would dump that water out and put new warm water in and mix in the seasoning. The cell's sink water only got to about 100 degrees, so it wasn't very good, but it was food, so I'm not complaining. The food they served us was good enough, but there was never very much of it, so I had to make do with what I had. For reference, I'm 5'11" and about 165 pounds. I've always been active and have a physically engaging job, so I eat a bit more and burn more calories. I would end up falling asleep sometime around 1 or 2 a.m. most days until 6 a.m. when it started all over again. After a weekend there, they finally moved me back to the minimum security dorm. This was a room about the size of a gymnasium with much lower ceilings. There were a total of 78 beds, 19 bunk beds on the back wall, with 2 rows of 20 single beds just in front of them. There was a communal bathroom with 3 urinals, 3 toilets, and cleaner to use before every movement, and 6 shower heads. Despite the 6 showers, we could only use 1 at a time, apparently with the exception of the guy who just hopped in there with me for a few minutes, cleaned, and went about his day. There was a guard desk with a guard there 24/7. 95% of the time, the guards were scrolling TikTok or playing online poker, paying no attention to the inmates, and even less attention to the showers that were 25 feet away from us. The other 5%, they would walk from bunk to bunk looking for stashes of fruit or unmade beds. We had a couple shakedowns where they tear the whole place up looking for contraband. Nothing really came of them though. The intake dorm also had a vending machine stocked with ramen, candy, other sweets like honey buns and cinnamon rolls, and things of that nature. Soda, coffee, sugar, you get the idea. A commissary-to-go machine, if you will. Everything from the vending machines was also less expensive, $1 for ramen instead of $1.40. There were also 2 microwaves and 2 TVs. One TV always had ESPN or some other sports channel, the other on a movie or show. The minimum dorm also didn't lock down from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and didn't lock down at night until 10 p.m. So while you sacrificed your privacy, the microwave and vending machine were too good to pass up, so everyone stayed in there. Oh, also the cot you slept on was actually somewhat comfortable, as much as foam on a metal rack can be, I guess. All of the workers stayed here as well as most non-violent offenders who weren't a nuisance. There were a couple of fights in here though, and the people involved got immediately sent to the hole. Yes, it's a real thing. Basically a cell with no TV, no other people, no commissary. Basically nothing at all but your thoughts and the occasional tray of food to tell you what time it is. I luckily did not have to check it out for myself. The days went by the same way in minimum, except I didn't get a nap from 1 to 3 p.m., so I got even less sleep in there. I did, however, get to read more books, so it wasn't all that bad. The only things to do were sleep, eat, read, play cards, maybe a little chess if you're feeling froggy that day, or sit on a metal seat and watch TV. The seats were unbearable for more than an hour. A lot of people also walked laps or did pull-ups on their machine that was supposed to be our recreational area. Did I mention we weren't allowed outside? Yeah, I'm still a bit salty about that, so I'll say it again. There were phones in each dorm to use. After your one free call, using the phone cost 21 cents per minute, which is expensive, so I used it sparingly. There was one guy who was arrested on some crazy drug charges in there, awaiting his trial. He used the phone for 8 hours a day, I'm not exaggerating. He also didn't speak any English and would sometimes start screaming into the phone. He actually got sent back to the secure dorms because he missed head count, because he was on the phone. I feel like there's a lot I'm missing, and it'll all come to me later. But for now, I'll wrap it up. Jail is not a fun place to be, never has been, never will be. That said, I deserved it and I did the time. Lastly, stay positive. Life is too short to spend it any other way. For those wondering what he did, based on his post history, it was drunk driving. Am I the jerk for refusing to drive to my wife's monthly family get-together? My wife, 33 female, and I, 35 male, have been married for 3 years. Her family is very tight-knit, and every month they have a family get-together at my wife's parents' house. It's always on Sundays because my wife's siblings have kids, and they all have activities on Saturdays, so Sunday is the only free day everyone has. They live a 3-hour drive from us. We always make it a day trip because obviously we have to work on Monday. Needless to say, it's a lot of driving in one day. The get-together is usually just a nice meal and some games, nothing too fancy or crazy. I like her family and enjoy hanging out with them, but there have been times when I don't feel like going, and there's no hard feelings about not attending. The problem is that if I don't attend, my wife doesn't attend. She's a very anxious driver, especially on freeways and highways where aggressive drivers and semi-trucks tend to be more common. She's never been in an accident or anything like that. She just doesn't feel comfortable driving long distances on freeways with speeding cars. It really freaks her out. So if I don't go, she won't drive herself there. There also isn't anyone else from her family that lives nearby that could pick her up without adding at least 2 hours to their drive. Last month, we didn't attend because I had just gotten back from a work trip and I wanted to use that weekend to relax at home. My wife and in-laws understood. This month's get-together is coming up Sunday. My wife is adamant that we attend this one because we missed the last one. I told her I'll go, but she's going to have to drive at least one leg of the trip. I don't want to be driving for 6 hours like every other time. This started a fight because she said I know how much she hates driving on freeways, and that's too far of a drive for her to keep from freaking out. I told her that if she wants to keep driving 6 hours in a day to see her family every month, then she's going to need to start driving at least half of it, because I'm tired of doing all that driving myself. I told her that I'll be with her in the car and will be a good co-pilot to keep her calm and focused, unlike when I drive and she buries her face in her phone for 2/3 of the drive. I told her we can take it slow and easy, and it will be good practice for her to become more comfortable with that type of driving. She's not agreeing to this and is insisting that I drive like every other time because of her anxiety about it. I'm refusing to budge and told her that this is something for her family, so she needs to start putting in at least some effort to make it happen. She thinks I'm being a jerk about it and not taking her feelings into consideration and being dismissive of her anxiety. We've not come to an argument on this yet, but I really don't want to give in. Driving 6 hours in a day can be exhausting, and I'm tired of being the only one to do it, especially when it's every month. Not the jerk. Honestly, I think you're approaching it very fairly. 6 hours of driving is definitely a lot. It's not fair for her to expect you to bear that entire burden every time to visit her family without driving at least part of the distance, and you pointing out that you'll be there supporting her as a co-pilot is the right approach. I can understand how anxiety makes driving scary and hard for some people, but also, it's really not fair to expect you to be the only one making the sacrifice here. That said, have you guys considered maybe going on Saturday, even if most of the family isn't available, and just entertaining yourselves that day or visiting with the family that aren't busy? It might make for a more relaxing experience for both of you if you're not cramming the driving into a single day. It might depend on if her family has a place to put you up, or if you can get a hotel or Airbnb nearby, but still an option. OP. My wife has actually suggested going there on Saturdays before, but honestly, I don't want to sacrifice my entire weekend every month to see her family. One Sunday a month, fine, that's doable, because at least I can have Saturday to do something I want to do. But the entire weekend every month is too much. Am I the jerk if I asked my girlfriend to put on some makeup for a party? So just typing out that title, it sounds terrible. I love my girlfriend. I love the way she looks. I love her humor, everything. We've been dating since college and we're now almost 30. It hurt to type almost 30. I was invited to a birthday party by some new friends recently, and they asked me if my girlfriend was coming. I always talk about her and hype her up, so they were all excited to meet her. The day of the party comes and she looks amazing. She had some nice jeans on and a cute crop top. I noticed she wasn't wearing any makeup, so I asked her if she was going to put some on. She took this terribly and made it sound like I was making her out as some sort of trophy. Keep in mind, I never ask this from her. When we go out on dates, I could care less what she looks like. It's also not like she never wears makeup. Whenever she goes out with the girls, she always uses it. At least for me, if I were being introduced to some friends of my girlfriend, I would try to look my absolute best for her. I want to look as good as I can to make her look good as well. We're practically married at this point, and I see her as an extension of myself and vice versa. I also understand I have no say or control in what she wants to do or wear, so I most likely am the jerk for even asking it. Give it to me straight. Am I the jerk? Edit. Very clear I'm the jerk. I won't make that mistake again. Info. Do you put on makeup when you meet her friends? You said you want to look your absolute best after all. You're the jerk. I don't even know where to begin. She's not a show pony. It's not her job to look hot for your friends. You're the jerk. It's funny how you try to deny treating her like a trophy and then sit there and explain how you want to treat her like a trophy and how you wouldn't have a problem with it if the tables were flipped. She isn't a fancy toy to show off. She's her own individual. Who the heck are your friends, and why should she be all that concerned about impressing them? Practically married still isn't married. It isn't even a thing. Even if you were married, that still wouldn't excuse your behavior or mindset. Maybe it's because I'm not from America, so could be culture differences, but I feel like you guys just look for reasons to be upset with your boyfriends or husbands. If my husband made such a simple request of me, I would do it. I respect him and appreciate all he does for me. 5 minutes of putting on makeup to make him happy would not be a problem. And let's be honest, we all know we look better with makeup. Why do you think they always do makeup for films and shows? I also know that if I asked a simple request of my husband, like putting on a nicer shirt or style his hair in a way I like, he would do it and not be upset or feel offended. When I was younger, I wondered why so many American men moved to my country and married my people instead of their own. But Reddit has shown me why that is. Edit. Yes, I am from the Philippines, but no, I would not blindly do anything my husband asks of me just because we're married. If he asked me to jump off a bridge, I would tell him you first. But something that takes 5 minutes, no problem, babe. It is no wonder your marriage rates are declining along with your birth rates. You always find a reason to paint yourselves as the victim, and anyone who does that is exhausting, whether they are a man or a woman. Also, to the foolish person who said my husband probably mistreats me, you have no clue what you're talking about. In my country, we still have God. Your country is the one where God is no longer followed, and that's why you have most of the problems you do. My heart honestly breaks for you and your families, and I hope you all one day heal from the bitterness that has consumed you. Oh, you know Reddit's not going to be happy about her. What would you do if I asked you to put on makeup, Karen? You'd need a new head. Company said all bonuses would be even, so I complied. I used to work at a bank. I won't name it, but I'm sure you guys won't have a problem guessing which bank it is. Anyways, my position was banker, and as a banker anywhere, you're paid bonus based on how well you do. The more bank accounts, credit cards, and personal loans you write out, the higher your bonus. For context, I've always been hardworking and dedicated to my job, especially at this job, because it was my first big girl job, and I was the youngest banker, 19 years old at the time, in my branch. I mainly felt like I had something to prove. So on average, I would try to do my best at my job. I wasn't lazy like a lot of people I worked with, and I wasn't afraid to learn how to do new things. For example, opening trust accounts or business accounts, etc. Now, a lot of things happened with this bank. It was getting sued left and right because some bankers were starting bank accounts without customers' consent. For the record, I never did this, but I did experience the intense pressure from my boss to sell, sell, sell. To give you an example of the pressure, if a certain amount of accounts goal wasn't hit, my boss would have a one-on-one every time it happened a little before the workday would end and say, "What did you do today to try to help you reach your goal? Why didn't you reach your goal? What will you do different tomorrow?" So you pretty much leave the bank that day feeling like crap. Anyways, once the lawsuit went public, the bank wanted to do some bonus changes to say it's changing its bank culture and blah blah blah. They changed it a couple times. The first was where goals weren't as high, but still based on individual sales. And then finally they decided to change it to where everyone in one branch would receive the same amount. The day we got the news about the bonus, my boss was super corporate about it and read the letter in bank terminology. So literally everyone in that meeting wasn't grasping the concept. So I raised my hand just to make sure I understood, and I asked, "Okay, so what you're saying is if I open 9 accounts and my coworker opens 2 at the end of the quarter, we're going to get paid the same?" She responded, "Yes." So I smirked and said, "Okay, just making sure I understand." Later that same day, I got asked to my boss's office and got in trouble because of having a negative attitude at the meeting. I told her I was simply making sure everyone understood what she was saying, to which she said that next time I should talk to her in private if I needed to clarify. What a jerk. Needless to say, from that day on, I never really tried as much. I mean, my bonus was just as much as the laziest person there, so what was in it for me to really try? I got talked to about it a couple times, but my response was always, "I'm doing just as well as everyone else," and it would end at that. I ended up leaving that job not too long after that, and I gotta say, I'm much happier for it. Excuse me? You want me to wash the windows? This happened more than 3 decades ago, when I was at the beginning of my working career. As a youth, I didn't really know upwards from downwards, and I was just happy that I had a steady job and a salary. The job itself didn't matter. As long as I had a job, I was happy. I was an operator of the production machine, which didn't really need higher education to operate, but it required a person to watch over it in case of some production hiccup or another error happened. Most of the machines ran just fine, and the operator's job was to put in materials or parts into it every now and then and to watch over it, and that was what I did. All in all, a very simple entry-level job. Then one day, one of my coworkers came up to me and told me that our manager required me to wash the windows of the factory today. I was kind of dumbfounded for a moment, and then I joked and told him, sure. At first, I thought it was a joke. I told him that I have to watch over my own work here, so was he sure about this? He told me that yes, that's what he was told to tell me. Well, I didn't quite believe what I had heard, and next lunch break, I went to look for the manager and asked if it was so. The manager told me that the windows are dirty and haven't been washed for years, so it's time to clean them, and that I should start right away. I was just like, oh, okay. He was naturally being cheap since he didn't want to hire some outsider to do it, and wanted to use me as a youngster to do the extra work. I went back to my work spot, thought a little bit on what to do and where to start, where to get the equipment, etc. Then I turned the machine I was operating off and began to work with the windows. The factory, while it wasn't too large, it wasn't small either, and some of the windows were pretty high up, so it wasn't quick work either at cases. But I was told what to do, and so I complied. My estimate was that it would take several days, if not the whole week, to finish the job. After the second day, someone noticed the parts were beginning to pile up at my spot, which was, of course, because there was no one there doing the process and the machine was offline. On the third day, someone found me washing the windows at one corner of the factory and asked what I was doing. Everyone was worried where I was and why the production line had stalled up since no one was operating the machine where I was supposed to be. They practically pulled me back to the manager and told him what had happened. I explained that I had been doing what I was told earlier and I was about halfway done, and that I can't be in two places at once. There were other managers present as well, and they all turned to look at the guy who had instructed me in the first place. We workers were told to leave, and I was told to go to my original job and start up my machine ASAP, and that if I want, I can do as much overtime as I want until the production quota has been reached. I believe they had some discussion among the managers behind the closed doors after we left. It took me a while, but I got a nice overtime bonus from that in the end. They also hired someone to wash the rest of the windows as well. My Karen wife is refusing to help with our baby. She has been evaluated for PPD multiple times by multiple doctors, and she does not have it. I, 28 male, have been with my wife, who's 29, for 7 years. I love her with all my heart, but I'm really upset with her right now. A little over a year ago, my wife announced that she was pregnant. I'm not going to lie, I was jumping for joy at the idea of being a father. She was on the pill, and to my knowledge took it perfectly, but I guess we fell into that 1% where birth control fails. I suggested not having it, but she wanted to keep the baby, so we went through with the pregnancy. My whole view has changed now that my son, who's 5 months old, is here. All of my worries and apprehensions melted away the first time I held him. However, I realized very quickly that my wife was not doing her share of childcare. We both work from home, but I'm the only one who gets up when he's crying to feed, change, or soothe him. She didn't want to naturally feed him, which is totally fine, but she has only fed him a handful of times in the past 5 months. She refuses to get up at night, so all of his nighttime care is on me. I can count on one hand the amount of diapers she's changed. I was lenient at first because I understand birth is very taxing on the body and can be traumatic, but I have seen no improvement in the past 5 months despite talking to her multiple times and telling her I need help. I'm exhausted. When I bring it up, she says she'll try harder, but she never does. Obviously, PPD and other such mental health issues were an immediate concern, but all of the doctors we went to said she doesn't fit the criteria. She loves our son, cuddles him and plays with him, but doesn't do any of the hard work like feeding and diaper changes. She has not gotten up at night a single time. I reached the end of my rope yesterday when my son would not stop crying. I was doing my best to soothe him, and my wife had the audacity to look up from the TV and complain that he was being too loud and to take him in another room. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I yelled at her and told her she's being a horrible mother. She was deeply upset by this and went to stay with her parents, leaving me and my son at home. Now she's calling me a jerk and has my in-laws texting me and calling me to tell me how much of a horrible jerk I am. I'm just so tired. I feel like a single parent. I do feel bad because I know what I said was mean, but I am also so angry that she's enjoying the good parts of parenting while I'm stuck with the hard parts. She goes out with friends and does fun things and partakes in her hobbies while I stay home with our baby. I have not gotten a day to myself in 5 months. Am I the jerk? Edit. She has nothing medically wrong with her, mentally, physically, or otherwise. I see a lot of people suggesting that something must be wrong, but I'm telling you, she has had mental and physical checkups and is completely fine from a medical standpoint. No PPD, no hormone imbalances, no mental illness. I don't know how many times I have to make this clear. You're the jerk. So your wife is pretty much acting the way that most dads do. But let me guess, it's too shocking for you because she's a woman. Honestly, men act that way and get away with it constantly. It's about time that us moms get a break while you dads step up and at least try to be a parent. Also, no matter what you're throwing a fit about, you have no excuse to yell at her. That's a major red flag, and I hope she dumps you. She deserves so much better. My Karen girlfriend demands I pay for her kids' Happy Meals because I earn more than her. I, 32 male, have been dating a fantastic woman for a few months who has multiple kids from a previous relationship. While our relationship is blossoming, we've hit a financial snag that's causing tension. For context, I earn 6 figures while she earns significantly less. I've always held a belief in splitting mutual expenses 50-50, even if there's an income disparity. However, I've been staunch in my stance that I shouldn't contribute to her kids' expenses because we're still in the early stages of our relationship. Here's a recent example. We all went to McDonald's for a quick bite. I covered my meal and she had to pay for herself and all of her kids. She looked a bit embarrassed when one of her kids asked for an additional item and she hesitated, counting her money. While I did offer to buy the extra item, I didn't pitch in for the rest of the meals. She later told me that she felt I could have been more generous given our income differences, especially in front of her kids. I understand where she's coming from, but I believe in personal responsibility. My upbringing taught me the value of money, and I feel that her kids' expenses are her responsibility. So, am I the jerk for sticking to my principles and not helping out financially for her kids during our outings? Edit. She has 4 kids. McDonald's was the kids' idea that she agreed to. The McDonald's meals were nearly $50 just for the kids. We've been together for about 2 months. Edit. I like the girl and I like her kids. They're cool. To those asking if I want to marry her or see a long-term future with her, how should I know? We've only been seeing each other for 2 months. Also, it was not my idea to be involved with her kids this early on. Final edit. Yes, I make 6 figures pre-tax. After taxes, about 40% immediately disappears into my retirement accounts to max them out. After that, another 30% goes to my own rent and utilities. With the remaining 30%, 10% gets saved for charity. The remaining 20% covers my own groceries. I typically cook for myself and my own hobbies. I am not swimming in money. In theory, you're not the jerk. You haven't been dating long and you aren't in a committed long-term relationship. Hopefully, your girlfriend is getting child support from the dad. However, you are the jerk in this example. For goodness sake, it's a Happy Meal. If I saw a stranger struggling to pay for a Happy Meal, I'd pay for it. You're grandstanding on principle, but your real-world behavior makes you a jerk, and likely it will make you an ex-boyfriend. Firstly, the 50-50 rule is mean if one person makes far more than the other, so you might want to read up on equity versus equality. Second, break up. If you're already nickel and diming the kids on a trip to McDonald's with this fantastic woman, you're a cheap jerk who cares more about $50 than about the fantastic woman. And that's fine, you're 100% within your rights. Just recognize that in yourself and cut her loose, because she is never, ever going to be able to do 50-50 with you if she makes that much less and has kids. Better not to waste her time. Imagine making 6 figures and not wanting to cover $50. He's a cheap dude, and no woman would want to be with someone like that. They've only been dating for 2 months, and if he pays now, he's gonna soon pay for everything. I don't understand all the "you're the jerk" comments. It's a 2-month relationship. Why should OP be responsible for feeding her kids when they just started dating? They don't even live together. Just because he earns more doesn't make him responsible for feeding her kids. That's her job as the mother. At worst, I would say everyone sucks here, because the conversation could have happened when the kids asked for McDonald's, where mom could have said she was tight on money. The OP could have offered to pay or suggested something else. But to think that he should have paid because he's the dude, he makes more money than she does, or whatever your convoluted and misguided brains came up with, OP is not ultimately responsible to pay for the kids that belong to his girlfriend of 2 months. I'm going with not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. 2 months and it's already like this? Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for a former friend's daughter's college? I, 37 male, had a friend, Roy, 37 male, when I was in high school. We were friends for years prior to graduating and remained friends years after. I considered him my best friend. At one point, he had a daughter, May, and I became her godfather at his and his partner's request. At the time, I was still living with a bunch of friends from high school, one of which was my roommate, Taylor, and his brother, Jordan. Roy split with his wife during this time, and since I was his closest friend, I convinced the other guys to let Roy move in. Jordan had never liked me from the get-go and attempted to drive wedges between my friends and I. He did this whenever I wasn't around, and I didn't realize how bad it had gotten until it was too late. He'd make shrewd comments about my girlfriend being out of my league and my career, among other things. And the few people who remained my friends told me in more detail that he lied about me, like saying I had trashed the kitchen when it was really him. And despite them trying to defend me, their words fell on deaf ears. I was unaware, but apparently even Roy believed Jordan. Our lease was ending near this point, and Jordan, Taylor, and Roy had plotted behind my back to kick me out. We lived in a 5-bedroom, and one of our roommates was leaving, but because of Jordan, many of my friends were uncomfortable moving in with me. So they decided to kick me out to bring 2 new people in, informing me about a month before the lease ended. I was betrayed and hurt, most of all by Roy, the person I considered a brother. After I got kicked out, I struggled on my own for a while. I was 24 at the time, and I had a decent job, which is the only reason I made it on my own, even if it was just barely. That career set me up well for my future, to the point that I now live very comfortably, to say the least. Fast forward about 6 years later, and Jordan drunkenly told Taylor and Roy that he had purposely got me kicked out, and that devolved into him spilling his guts about the situation. Turns out that he was jealous of my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and how easy my life looked. Roy and the others attempted to reconcile, and though I tried, it just never felt right. I remained low contact. That brings us to now. May graduated, and they asked me to help pay for her college since I'm her godfather. I refused, based on the events of over 10 years ago now, and the fact that I hadn't been treated like her godfather in over a decade. He, his family, and my mother all seem to think that I'm in the wrong. My wife is upset that they're even asking. I genuinely don't feel like I am, but I'm sick of being pestered by so many. So Reddit, am I the jerk for refusing to pay for her college? Not the jerk. Never heard of a godparent being asked to pay for college, especially when they haven't been involved in the kid's life. Forget them. I'm with your wife here. They have a lot of nerve. Not the jerk. You can tell by the way that they behaved towards you in the past that these people don't like you. They just like the idea of your money. The only way that you would be the jerk would be if you gave in to their BS. Even then, you'd only be the jerk to yourself. My Pokémon Go account was deleted out of spite. First time posting here and in need of dire help. I made my account in 2016, as most of you all did, and only got back into it recently. I've been going hard since then, racking up over 9 million experience. I went from level 27 to 37. I woke up this morning, caught a rare Pokemon, and did some of my morning routine. I came back to see my account banned permanently. I've sent in an appeal already, but how would I go about winning this appeal? I've never spoofed, I've never broken any of the rules, so what gives? Update. A few hours after submitting my post here, I received an email with a confirmation of my account deletion. I immediately responded, trying to cancel this request, but they've yet to respond to me. I'll provide a bit clearer of the story of events that transpired the day before yesterday and today as well. I started seeing a guy about a month ago, as we both played Pokémon Go, and he was seemingly playing as much as me, so we both thought it would be a good match. The day before yesterday, he was fairly upset at me over pursuing a romance in Baldur's Gate 3 and mentioning it to him. I personally thought it was silly, and I wasn't really okay continuing to be with someone who will get upset over computer romances, seeing as I play games like Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon as well, where these are also present. He had asked me to come over, and I said fine. At his house, he apologized to me for acting that way, and also explained that he doesn't want to argue about these things. I thanked him for the apology. We did some trades before bed, as we typically get lucky trades often, and went to sleep. I woke up around 7 a.m. and he was already up and about. I had heard him get out of bed earlier, and he mentioned that he woke up at 6, so it must have been around this time. We're talking a bit, and he shows me that a Pokemon has spawned, so I hop on it myself, and I catch the Pokemon. I then put the phone away to spend some time with him, as he's heading out of town until Thursday, just a few days. Around an hour later at 8:30, I checked Pokémon Go again before I intended on leaving his place. I received a ban notification on my screen saying I've been banned permanently. Now, to me, this is weird. I had not broken any of the rules. I kind of brushed it off thinking it was a mistake. I said, oh well, I'll submit a ban appeal and they'll see that I've done nothing wrong. My partner though, he was pretty upset about it. I had never seen him cry previous to this, as we have only been together a month, but he burst into tears and explained I'm the only partner who has played Pokemon Go with him. I consoled him, told him it would be okay, it's just a ban and I can fix it, and we both went on our way, him to work and me to my place. I was looking up any possible way that I could have been banned. I was researching all day to see if I might have done something weird or anything, as I've always played cleanly with no assistance, with the exception of that one-time Pokemon Go Plus official accessory. Now here's where it gets odd to me. At 8 p.m. I receive an email confirmation on my account deletion and that it will be processed. That's incredibly strange, as I never submitted anything. I read the full conversation and see there was an account deletion submission at 6:30 a.m. this morning, but I was asleep. I dug a bit deeper and found that the deletion code is generic. This raised some red flags, and I was concerned maybe someone did it out of spite. I looked into this further and checked all my phone activity on an email account set up on my phone, and there it was. At 6:24 a.m., someone had opened my Twitter. I had sent a frustration message to one of my best friends explaining that I don't think this relationship can work out if he will act like this. Now, when I woke up, there was no notification they replied to me. My PC was also off, as I know sometimes Twitter will mark messages as read if you have a Twitter tab open. So this led me to believe the following. My partner read my Twitter notification DM from my friend. He panicked or got angry. He then went through all my messaging apps to check to see if he could find something. My only guess is that he thought Will from Baldur's Gate was a real person, or if I said anything to anyone else. This was done in a matter of a minute per messaging app. He opened my Pokemon Go at 6:29 a.m. and submitted the deletion request, as it can only be done via the app as far as I understand. My Gmail was open at 6:31 a.m., and this is when the deletion request was received. The emails were deleted and removed from the trash so I would not see them. I only ended up seeing it thanks to the message that I got to confirm my account deletion. I'm not entirely sure how else this could have happened. I have zero history of sleepwalking. I need any and all possible advice here. Is it still possible that the account deletion can be canceled? I cannot entirely confirm it was him. I've directly asked him and he says he wouldn't do this. I'm his main Pokemon Go partner that he plays with. This really sucks. I played Pokemon Go and I cannot tell you guys how much time it takes to get to level 35. It sucks that the customer support really didn't help her at all. Am I the jerk for ditching my sister and making her find her own way to the airport? My sister and my mom are always late. My dad and I prefer to be early, so it drives us nuts. Probably me more than him. She has made me late for countless events over the years. We're currently in another province for my cousin's wedding, and when we booked our flights a month ago, we discussed that I would have to drive everyone to the airport because my sister and mom don't drive, and my dad has a knee condition that makes it a bit painful for him to drive right now. The week before the trip, I started preparing my sister for the fact that I would not tolerate her making us late for the flight. Traveling makes me anxious, and I prefer to allow extra time in case any hiccups arise. Because the airport we were flying out of is incredibly busy, it was suggested that everyone arrive 2 hours prior to departure, and I said I wanted to allow an extra half hour on top of that to be safe. We live over 40 minutes from the airport, and traffic can be unpredictable. This would mean that we would have to leave our house at 10 a.m. On the day of the trip, she was still in bed at 8 a.m., and there was no sign she had packed. I knocked on her bedroom door and said, "Reminder that we're leaving at 10 a.m. I'm not joking. Anyone who's not in the car at 10 is not coming with me." She said she knew, and I'd already told her a million times. Regardless, I repeated this again when she got out of the shower at 9:20. At 9:50, we were putting bags in the car, and she was in the towel doing her hair. I gave her a 10-minute warning and walked out the door. By 9:59, we were in the car in the driveway, and there was no sign of her. My mom called her from the car, and she didn't answer. At 10:01, I started the car, and my mom freaked out, saying there was no way I was actually going to leave her there. Shocker, I did. She called my mom's phone at 10:15, asking where we were, and my mom ranted about how I was being ridiculous and there was nothing she could do. Traffic was a bit heavier than usual, and we ended up getting to the airport 2 hours and 10 minutes before departure, and getting to our gate 25 minutes before boarding. I had time to get a coffee and some snacks, and didn't have to stress that we were going to miss our flight. My sister had to call an Uber and arrived as they were calling us for boarding. Now, a few days later, my mom is still ticked and says I should at least pay my sister back for the Uber. My sister isn't speaking to me except when absolutely necessary, and my dad thinks the situation is pretty funny. I feel like I was justified, but I'm also open to the fact that I might have been a bit of a jerk by leaving her. I was driving my own car that I paid for, and I paid for my own plane ticket, if that matters at all. I have not and do not intend on paying for her Uber. You told her repeatedly. She acknowledged repeatedly. She clearly understood that you'd leave at 10 on the dot. She just didn't believe it. She should have. So, not just not the jerk, but good for you. You treated your sister as an adult. Now she just has to learn to act like one. Not the jerk. And when someone tells you you should wait because that's just how she is, just say, no, that's just how I am. You do want a tip, don't you? At the time, I worked at a restaurant that had a central bar, a restaurant surrounding it, and it had wings on both sides and in the front. To get to the wings required a step up, and there was a set of stairs at both ends of each wing. On the night in question, I was working the wing that had tables 11 through 19. Next to me, down a couple stairs, were the 20s. The couple came in and were seated at table 15, right in the middle of my section. They had an attitude and a chip on their shoulder the size of Texas. From their very first words to me, they were talking to me like they thought they had seen fish with higher IQs. As they placed their order, they described in painful detail what other servers had messed up when they had placed this order at previous visits to this restaurant. The order concluded with the following words: "I hope you paid good attention. You do want a tip, don't you?" My jaw hit the floor. I told them I was going to grab their drinks and ring their order in. Grab their drinks I did. Ring their order in I did not. But I had something else to do with the computer, probably printing off someone else's check, so I did that. I had to take care of other tables, refilling drinks, grabbing sauces, running food out, the usual. But every time I had to get from tables 11 to 14 to tables 16 through 19, I took a detour through the kitchen and came back by way of the 20s. I made sure to never pass table 15. I would never do anything disgusting to anyone's food, but you can bet that it was a good 12 minutes between the time that they gave me their order and the time that I finally saw fit to think about ringing it in. And when it came up in the heated expo window, the expo on duty told me that the order for table 15 was up, and I said I'd get it as soon as I brought drinks out to another table. I went and checked on the rest of my section, but table 15's glasses contained nothing but ice. As I finished up with table 16 and turned to take my detour, I briefly saw table 15 try and wave and grab my attention, but I pretended not to see them. I had to turn really fast so that the illusion was believable and also so they couldn't see me smirking. When I went back into the kitchen the next time, well, if you're a server, you can just look at food and tell that it's been sitting in the expo window for a minute. Table 15's order had definitely acquired that look. Someone shouted, "Hands to 87." So I grabbed the food for table 87 and followed its server out to their section, then went back into the kitchen to refill dressings. As I was walking back from the cooler where I had just put the ranch away, I saw the order for table 15 going out the door after only about 7 minutes in the expo window. I honestly don't know how long I was going to let it sit, but the expo valued her space and made someone else get the food to take it out of her sight. I stopped by table 15 to check on them pleasantly, ask if everything came out all right, and they said that they needed some dressing and a refill on their drinks. I said sure, no problem. As I delivered the only refill of the night, I said, "Oh, you asked for honey mustard. So sorry, I'll go get that right away." By the time they actually got their honey mustard, there wasn't much chicken left to put it on. I spent most of the rest of their meal studiously avoiding passing by their table. I delivered their check with a smile, picked up the card quickly, and delivered it back with a pen for a signature. They had definitely spent more time than they had planned on spending in that restaurant that night, so as soon as they were able to sign the credit slip, they hurried out to wherever they were headed next. The tip written on the credit card slip was 0, and boy, did I earn it. Am I the jerk for using the words weaponized incompetence to describe my wife's behavior? Background: I moved in with my wife back in May. Prior to that, we were long distance for years. When we combined households, I brought my 2 cats. There was some friction at first because she's very much unfamiliar with animals, and her entire childhood she never had so much as a gerbil. But she did warm up to them over time. She still isn't entirely comfortable though, so as a compromise, the house is divided into cat and no cat areas. They're allowed free reign of the basement. They aren't allowed into the bedroom, kitchen, or bathroom, and they're allowed out in the main floor, but only when I'm home to supervise them. So far, this compromise has worked well for us. The incident occurred on my day off. I was still in bed when my wife, who was getting ready for work, she leaves very early, woke me up. One of the cats had escaped into the main room, and she needed me to come get him to put him back downstairs. I've tried to show her how to wrangle cats before, how to pick them up so she's supporting their weight, how to shoo them out of a room, how to use a spray bottle as a deterrent to keep them off furniture, etc. However, she's been reluctant to use any of what I've taught her. So she did none of those things and asked me to help instead. When I asked her why she didn't simply pick him up and put him in the other room, she said she literally couldn't do it. The cat is too heavy. Reddit, this is a 12.8-pound cat who has the sunny disposition of a brainless orange tabby. This is not a Maine Coon, a hefty boy, or a feral tomcat. He will happily let people pick him up and move him. He likes the attention. I expressed disbelief at this. Even a kid or a little old lady would be able to pick him up. It's not difficult, and it's something she needs to be able to do in case this kind of thing happens when I'm away or at work. And here's where I may have been the jerk. I used the words weaponized incompetence. I love my wife dearly, but this isn't an isolated incident with her, and I'm not the only person in her life she's done this with. Having seen a bit of the family dynamic in action, I think she learned from a young age that she can get out of certain tasks by pleading helplessness. Now she's furious with me. Less so for the cat thing, and more so for the use of the words weaponized incompetence. She's also mad at the implication that I don't actually believe her when she says she physically cannot lift a cat. She has no disability or inability that would preclude her from doing this. Not the jerk. I do think she just may have a general fear, so I think this is why she can't lift it. Not because of the weight, but because of being scared to, which is fine. But this is why I say you're not the jerk. I do also believe she's being unreasonable about the situation. Keeping your pets in the basement for the majority of their lives is not a fair compromise. These are living animals that deserve being in the home. Not in the bedroom? Fair. Not on the countertops? Fair. The rest is not, and I think she will slowly build up on that, because she simply is afraid or just doesn't like cats. Who cares if the cat was in the living room? Finish getting ready and leave. The cat isn't going to chase you. This would be a deal breaker for me though. My cats are part of the family. You don't need to pet them, but they deserve to roam freely, within reason, around the house. I think y'all need to have a serious conversation on your living situation before this builds up even worse, because this will only be the beginning. I don't want to see these anymore. No problem. I previously worked at a place where I was hourly but should have been salary. They later made me salary, and had to work odd hours at times due to the demands of the job. Despite the extra time that I worked, I was still expected to be clocked in at 8 and to leave no earlier than 5. All while making sure I got as little overtime as possible because they didn't want to pay overtime. They also expected me to take lunch at a predetermined time, even though it conflicted with the nature of the work I did. Every time I clocked in late, clocked out early, or clocked out for lunch at the wrong time, this was the bulk of the issue, a report was generated from HR and sent to my supervisor. Despite my making the case that it was basically impossible to adhere to these requirements, my supervisor point blank told me, "I don't want to see these anymore," in reference to the report they were waving around in the air about my comings and goings on the time clock. So I said, "Okay, I'll make sure you don't have to see them anymore." I then walked down to HR and informed them that my supervisor was tired of seeing these reports and no longer wanted to see them. I told them verbatim what I was told, and they accepted it without question, as I said it came straight from my supervisor. Surprisingly, they didn't double-check the request at all. They simply stopped sending the reports to my supervisor. To be fair, they were tired of sending the reports and knew the situation was not tenable. After that, things were great. My supervisor was happy and had always been happy with my work. Many months down the road, I spoke with one of my salaried coworkers about it when they remarked that our supervisor hadn't been griping about the reports in a while. So I told them what had transpired. They remarked, "I don't think that's what they meant when they said that." Ultimately, I don't know how they actually meant it. All I know is that I fixed the issue by doing exactly what they said, and everyone was happy after that. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law showed up to Christmas at my house when they knew they weren't welcome. I was trying to keep things to 2 posts, but I realized while compiling everything that part 2 was just too long, so I've divided it into a part 3. For those who commented en masse for me to get cameras, I will, when I can afford it. I'm still in financial recovery from buying a house last year, and as far as I know, good cameras need a decent computer to record to, and I don't have anything more than a 3-year-old laptop that runs Windows 10. Yes, I'm aware of doorbell cameras. That will be the first kind I get. For those who kept saying that I should have just gotten my brother and sister-in-law arrested, the only reason I didn't was because they are parents. Their kids need them, and if Dan was arrested, he'd likely lose his job. And without that, his family has no money, and sister-in-law has a 3-month-old baby right now. Neither of them need to end up in jail. But you don't need jail for revenge. Police can help, yes, but I got payback without filing a police report. Would I be this merciful again? More than likely not, and they know it. I decided to wait on making an account and posting until after the new year, just in case more stuff happened. And it did. As previous readers know, my sister-in-law was making passive-aggressive posts on social media that were obviously directed at me, especially after sister-in-law had her fourth baby in November. She was posting the same repetitive nonsense over and over again. She just found semi-clever ways of rewording it. But she pretty much just kept regurgitating that she was tired of living with my parents, that there isn't enough space, she needs her own house, blah blah blah. I know I sound dismissive, but live through what I have with these people, and you'd be ready to sarcastically play tiny violins in front of them too. They're just that bad. And since I waited until January to make an account, more happened just like I thought. I stated before that I'd invited half the family for a Christmas Eve party at my house, and everyone I invited all came, even though it was a fairly long drive of around 3 to 4 hours for them. But they wanted to come and show me their support. I was praised by them a lot for how hard I'd worked to get a house of my own, and that they were sorry for everything I'd went through. I was asked why I didn't just take my camper and drive the 3 hours back to them instead of living pretty much homeless for so long. And I had to sheepishly admit that I was very attached to living around here, and I had my best employment opportunities in this area. My hometown doesn't have a lot of great job opportunities in my field, if any at all, and I wanted to make my own way as much as I could. An answer that they overall accepted. We moved on to having a rather nice party, the best I'd been in years. Some relatives even brought CDs of great Christmas albums, and I have to say, the one my uncle brought of Ray Charles was my favorite. He sings Christmas songs like no one else I've heard. It was a grand and happy time. I felt like, for once, I could just forget my past issues and enjoy the moment, but I wouldn't be writing this if it had stayed that way. About 2 hours into the party, you know who showed up. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law popped in trying to look all smiles. They didn't even knock, just walked right in through my front door like they were meant to be there. I shut off the music and told them that they needed to leave immediately. They begged to stay and said that they had brought gifts. One of my uncles stood up and yelled at them before I got another chance to speak. And he said that they don't deserve to be in my home or my life after the crap they tried to pull months earlier. And he was backed up by several other relatives. Mind you, this guy is my mother's brother, and he used to love her to pieces until he found out about the crap that went on between me and my parents. My grandparents, mother's parents, as old as they are, hurriedly got in between us and said to my parents that if they want to make amends with me, it's far too soon. And they've never been more disappointed in them than they were this past year. They'd hidden their favoritism for my brother from prying eyes for a long time, but no one was fooled anymore, and they needed to make a serious effort to try and actually treat me like a son if they ever wanted to be in my life again. Then they turned to Dan and sister-in-law and said they've seen the repetitive nonsense sister-in-law keeps posting about. They're tired of it and to just let it go already. My house will not become their new home. Sister-in-law went back to her old standard of crying and had a pity party about how she should be the one living in this house and not me. She plopped down in a chair to have a tantrum and say it wasn't fair I got this house to myself when I have no family of my own and she has 4 kids that need more space. And she just wanted a better place to live in and feel like a real mom. It was petty of me, but I loudly pointed out that she sucks as a mother because she lets my mother do most of the parenting while she sits on her butt all day drinking, playing on her phone, or going out and spending all of Dan's money. And she has the nerve to complain about it. I even joked that I'm surprised her baby doesn't get drunk from drinking her milk since she drinks so much booze, which I admit went a bit too far because I got some stares. And sister-in-law demanded to know if I was calling her a bad mom. I said the evidence speaks for itself, and if she wanted to be able to afford to move out of my parents' house someday, then she needs to put her college degree to some use, get a job, and learn to save money. My mother already does most of the childcare for my brother's kids anyway, so she'd have plenty of time after her baby gets a little older. My brother's eldest kid, who's 7, ran up and started kicking and screaming at me for yelling at his mom, and he kept going off on me about how his mom said that I was the bad guy who made her cry and didn't let them live here. That's when my brother grabbed his son to pull him away, but all the other relatives jumped back in, and this sort of turned into a family intervention against my sister-in-law and brother. She was crying, her new baby was crying, her kids were crying. Heck, even Dan was very nearly in tears from the verbal lashing he was being assaulted with. He ended up just sitting on the ottoman I keep shoes in by the front door and looking like a complete wreck. He couldn't look anyone in the eye. He couldn't even say 2 words to me. Not with a whole house filled with angry people ready to judge him if he tried to let out his inner golden child again. If they weren't there to get in his way, I'd bet this would have ended up a repeat of when he tried to order me around and tried to take my house months earlier. By this point, though, he had been so thoroughly humiliated that his and my parents' reputation in the family was completely destroyed because the masks were all off now. Soon after, my parents, brother, and sister-in-law all left in defeat. The party resumed, and we all avoided speaking of what just happened for the rest of the evening. Since most of the adults had been drinking, everyone stayed the night in my house. I even let some of them sleep in the camper so there'd be enough space. I admit, it also makes a good guest house. My relatives all wanted a tour of it earlier as well, and they said they couldn't believe I'd been living in it for around 2 years. I got a lot of questions about it, like what summer and winter was like, and so on. I was up earlier than anyone else Christmas morning and had a fresh pot of coffee and some ibuprofen for those spiked eggnog hangovers a few of them had. I was complimented on being a way nicer host than my parents ever were, and we all agreed to do this again next Christmas. After Christmas, sister-in-law did finally stop making posts that were obviously digs at me and deleted all of the old ones as well. But shortly after the new year, she more recently made a new post complaining about how she had tried to convince my parents to get her a camper like I did, so it could be set up in the backyard so Dan and his family could use the whole house as their family home. Well, a taste of one's own medicine is never fun, because my parents turned that idea down, vehemently I hear. No one is going to push them out of their own home, let alone their master bedroom. The post was only up for a couple of days before sister-in-law removed it, and she has hardly posted anything since then. She loves to complain, but if a tree falls and no one is around to hear it, can it still complain? Sister-in-law, I guess, has realized there's no point in doing it when no one hears her anymore, and Dan can't afford to move his family out on his salary alone anytime soon. If they end up expecting another kid in the next few years, I won't be surprised. Things mellowed down for me since then, and I've even invited friends over for a poker night. I suck at poker because I can never remember a darn thing about it. But so what? We get to drink beer and eat junk food while being merry idiots. We all loaded up on Whoppers from Burger King and just had at it the best way 4 grown men can when they just want to have a good unadulterated time and get drunk. I think maybe around summer I'll look into possibly dating someone. I'm not exactly getting younger here. Fingers crossed that goes well. My camper just sits idle in my yard now, and I admit, there were some times I went out there just to spend time in it. I did live in it for 2 years. It's like my second home, and maybe one day I'll actually get to use it for camping like it was meant to be. I've never been camping. My parents considered it a waste of time, so it'd be completely a new experience for me. This pretty much marks the end of what happened. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law have all been staying very clear of me. In fact, they seem to have gone back to acting like I don't exist, like they did before I bought a house. Not like that bothers me at all. It's better that way. But they'll inevitably come back in some way. I know they will. I just wonder what kind of stupid thing they'll do next. If anything notable like all of this ever happens again, I'll make another post if this account is still active. I hope OP can have a movie made about his life. Can you imagine how good it would be? My Karen neighbor is demanding a copy of my apartment key. So I recently moved into my new apartment complex less than 60 days ago. There are only 4 units in my complex, 2 downstairs and 2 upstairs. I reside downstairs in the second apartment. Everyone here has lived here for at least 5 years, whilst the oldest resident has lived here for 8. Everyone knows everyone and has been good friends with each other for as long as each one has been a resident. Everyone in my building has kids besides me, and the majority are single mothers. I'm the only man. Apparently, there's an unspoken agreement I at first had no knowledge of between the other tenants that the hallway door is to never be locked. No one ever locks the hallway door. That was until I arrived. From my knowledge, no one in the building has a hallway key, just the keys to their own apartments. The cost to replace a key is $70, quoted from my landlord. I just finished up my place and have officially moved in for about 3 weeks now. Each time I leave and come back from my complex, I always lock the hallway door. It's always been important to lock all doors around me. My neighbor that works night shift has arrived home for the past couple of weeks to a locked hallway door, which is a surprise given that the door hasn't been locked for years. Apparently, everyone lost their key their first year or so living in the complex. I will hear continuous knocking and banging until someone comes to open the door. The first few nights I was awakened and I got up to unlock the door. After the first week, I've since stopped answering and my neighbor will get up to go unlock it to let our other neighbor in. If my neighbor isn't home or doesn't wake up to come to the door, she will knock and bang on every window and yell until someone comes to open the door. Yesterday, my neighbor asked if I could please leave the door unlocked, given that it's always been that way and they would like me to continue doing so. I expressed that while we live in a dangerous neighborhood, rated one of the top 5 most dangerous in our city, I feel more safe knowing strangers can't enter our building. While she understood my concerns, she assured me no one ever comes here other than residents and their visitors, and my safety is not to worry about. I had to beg to differ. She then asks would I mind lending her my hall key so she can make a copy and let others make their own copy from hers. I politely declined because I wasn't comfortable with that. She offered to pay me to make a copy myself, in which I also declined. For the past week, my neighbors have barely spoken to me. We usually tell each other good morning and chat a little bit, or just say hi or bye, but not even that nowadays. My neighbor, whom volunteers at the food bank in our community, would come back with goodies and share with everyone in the complex. And she no longer knocks on my door to offer me a box as she usually did every Wednesday. I don't care for the food, but the change in this routine leads me to believe I may have upset the rest of the tenants, and I honestly don't want any bad blood. So, my understanding is that this is a communal hallway leading to individual apartment entrances, and the doors to individual apartments can be locked? I don't understand why you wouldn't let them copy your hallway key if that's the case, to be honest. It costs like $3 to $5. You're the jerk. Not always. Some high security keys can be expensive, but it doesn't matter as he's not being asked to pay for it. You're the jerk. You live in a dangerous neighborhood and you're making it so your neighbors are trapped outside at night. You aren't participating in letting them in despite knowing that you locked them out, and you refuse to get them a copy of the communal door key even though they're happy to pay for it. Dude, you suck. Counterpoint. Why has everyone else lost their high security door key? Landlords should charge them all to replace the lock. That's a serious concern. If they pay you for a copy, I don't see what your issue is. It's $70 for the landlord to do it, so it would be cheaper if you did it for everyone. If you want that community and connection, then you have to give a little to get a little back. You're the jerk. Am I the jerk for jumping out of the way when my niece and nephew tried to push me into the pool? Plus updates. My folks decided to host a barbecue because I guess that's what older people do. I declined because I really don't like my 2 sisters, their husbands, or their kids. Wife and I are child-free. Mom then pressured my wife. Long story short, we went. By the time we arrived, there were about 20 people there. My sisters and their husbands were already solidly buzzed. Drunk, really. My mom was spending 100% of her time trying to keep the nieces and nephews, ages 7 to 11, more or less under control. My dad had strategically retreated to the whirlpool part of the pool with small cooler full of beers. Wife and I made small talk with miscellaneous people, ate food, and we had a frozen margarita. Sisters and brother-in-laws took turns criticizing us for being late, not being in our swimsuits, and messing up the vibe. Whatever. Typical suburban summer get-together. About 45 minutes in, 2 of the kids ran at one of the neighbor guests who was standing next to the pool and pushed her in. She was at the pool steps, stumbled in, but didn't really fall, so only got half wet. She was clearly very unhappy about it, but she didn't make a scene. Just went over to where the parents were, grabbed their towels, dried herself off, and left. Sisters and brother-in-laws thought it was funny. A bit later, I was standing a few feet away from the pool, chatting away with someone. I saw 3 of the kids running full tilt at me from the corner of my eye. Obviously, I was next. Not that it's terribly difficult to outwit the kids, but I just jumped out of their way at the last second. All 3 of them ran straight into the pool at full speed. Most of the other guests, including my wife and me, started laughing, but their moms, who as I mentioned were pretty buzzed, absolutely freaked out. Apparently, 2 of the kids couldn't even swim. Since I wasn't in swim gear, I stepped back from the pool and let other people fish them out. The little brats were bawling their heads off. At that point, all heck broke loose. The 4 drunk parents were yelling at everyone in general, and me in particular for what I had done, and also because 2 of the kids had been videoing the trick using their parents' iPhones, which were now at the bottom of the pool. One of my brother-in-laws got into the pool to try to retrieve the phones, but his BMI and BAC made that impossible. No one else volunteered to help, unsurprising given that my sisters were still jerks to everyone. I told my sisters it was their job to watch their kids, and that if anything had happened to them, it would have been their responsibility, not mine. There were some pretty strong words on both sides. Wife and I left after the other brother-in-law fell over and face-planted while yelling at us. Now they're saying I should have let the kids knock me into the pool and have their fun, and ruin my phone. So, am I the jerk? Side note, Dad, of course, never got out of the whirlpool. Edit. I realize that they're just kids and they were just having fun. The fact that they thought this was okay is more of a reflection of their parents than them. Just wish we hadn't gone. It's nice to see my folks and their neighbors, but I really don't like my sisters or their husbands. They don't hide their envy of us, and they're just exhausting to be around. I've never been close to my sisters. They're 8 and 10 years older than me. I also don't have much in common with their husbands. They're okay guys, but I just don't give a hoot about the things that are important to them and vice versa. I do know that the 4 of them are somewhat envious of our lifestyle. Both the sisters are stay-at-home moms. Both the husbands make good money. One makes noticeably more than I do. But both my wife and I have professional careers, we don't have kids, and we are way more responsible with money. As a result, we have a lot more investments, etc. And we don't have to drive cars full of kid debris, and we take nice trips once or twice a year. It definitely grates on both sisters and by extension their husbands, so we get some petty behavior from them on an ongoing basis. Neither my wife nor I enjoy their company, which is why I wanted to skip the get-together. Just not worth it to me, but my wife is a positive person and is usually happy to see them. Hopefully next time your wife won't feel guilted into going. That's probably the one positive thing that will come out of this. Wife is much more tolerant and forgiving than I am towards my siblings, but based on what she was saying on the way home, I think she's had it with them as well. Your dad sounds awesome. Yeah, he's very chill. He loves being around groups of people. He used to be in sales. He likes people to enjoy themselves and is definitely enjoying life as a retiree. He and 2 other guys with him just sat there and watched the show. Mom's cool too, but the situation upset her. Update. After we left, the party ended on a pretty sour note. My drunk brother-in-law who face-planted while yelling at me had to go to urgent care and get his face stitched up. He was too toasted to drive, so Dad took him. Dad was very not happy about this. Later that evening, my sisters started a group text and said some really nasty things. Their husbands threw in a few comments as well. Wife and I blocked the 4 of them. My mom called me, and she was pretty upset about what they had said. She and Dad were in the chat, and I don't blame her. Because of the texts, my folks insisted my sisters and brother-in-laws come over the next day, Sunday, without their kids to get some things straight and lay down some ground rules, Mom's wording. The result was a contrite, if unenthusiastic, apology from the siblings via my mom's phone. I'm glad my wife was with me when they called. Her hard stares kept me from saying things I wanted to. I just told them thanks and that we felt no need to discuss it further. Since I thought things were settled, I unblocked them. That evening, I got a text from one of my brother-in-laws telling me that the phones cost them this much money and asking if I'd be paying for them. What? I replied, never. Took a screenshot of his message and sent it to my folks with a note that we were done with this nonsense. We're going no contact with sisters and their spouses and not to invite us to any more holidays or get-togethers if they'll be there. Then I blocked my sisters and their spouses again. At that point, crap really hit the fan. Dad called them and laid into them. Among other things, he told them that grandkids were not welcome at his place indefinitely. Since my mom regularly provides free babysitting, that got them pretty rattled. He also banned them from using the vacation house and told them my wife and I actually own it, not he and Mom. This completely freaked them out. Both of my sisters' families use that place a lot, including having their friends up there for weekend getaways. This was very much out of character for my folks. They'd clearly had it. And for reference, I never wanted my sisters to know that we owned the place. We bought it for my folks. They had always wanted a place in the mountains. Keeping the ownership quiet was just a way to avoid drama with my siblings. A couple of days later, my sisters and their husbands came to our place unannounced to apologize in person. We were out to dinner and they left a note. One sister also called me at work too. I sent her a voicemail. We've decided being no contact is the best thing for the indefinite future and haven't interacted with them for at least 3+ weeks. Personally, I'm done. They can buzz off. Update. It's been less than a month, but I have to say that blocking them has actually made our lives noticeably more peaceful. I hadn't realized how much ongoing low-level drama they create. It's not toxic, they're not bad people, they're just tiresome and petty. And I personally don't care about them using the weekend place. It's ours technically, but we bought it for my folks. They control it, and they decide who uses it when they're not there. We pay for all of the operating costs and taxes. One good thing about this blow-up is that we now know what we'll be doing with the property once my folks get older. I was prepared to take over managing it, allocating weekends, maintaining it and such, but now we know we'll just sell it, and if we want to go up to the mountains, we'll just rent an Airbnb. OP's wife held a talent show at their wedding reception. Now she's jealous of her friend's performance. I, male 28, knew her since college, and I'll get that out of the way first. The past few days have shown a different side of her that's a little surprising, because Kate is her best friend from college. My wife, Nancy, wanted to do a mini talent show at our reception, and she talked it up beforehand too. She read a poem that she made for the event, and Kate performed a song that she wrote. Long story short, one of the guests who I invited is into producing, and he reached out to her after she performed. They exchanged information, and Kate was really excited. He wanted to network with her following the reception, and she even thanked my wife for hosting the talent show over text. But Nancy became really bitter about it, and that's why I'm writing this. She hasn't responded to Kate's message, but she said that she regretted doing the talent show. She also asked me to block Edward, the producer, on my socials and contacts, and I told her that seemed a bit much. She didn't like my answer and said that I was wrong to not take her side after just getting married, but I told her she should be happy for her friend. She didn't like that either and vented to some in our friend group about how Kate was bragging, but some of them disagreed. She said she didn't want to hang out with them anymore for the time being, and that included me too. Two of her girlfriends even texted me that she was overreacting and that they were also surprised to see her acting this way. They also asked if she was okay too. My dad is suggesting counseling and said that asking me to remove friends is an unhealthy way to start a marriage, and I'm honestly more than a little scared. I asked if she'd be open to counseling, but she said there was no need because Kate was her friend first, and I shouldn't choose Kate over her. I just want to ask what to do next since she refused counseling and sees no issue with cutting off our friends. Edit. I want to add that Nancy complained that her poem didn't get as good of a reception as Kate's song. Kate didn't study music in college, but practices on the side, and her text was really thankful for the opportunity that the talent show provided. Kate is also engaged to her longtime boyfriend. Update. It's been a little over 2 weeks since my first post, and I've had some time to try and process. A lot of it still feels surreal, having known her since my early 20s and the 180 after the wedding. I want to address a few things that were asked in my first post before getting to the update. Nancy and Kate were not the only ones who performed at the talent show. During planning, Nancy said she wanted to showcase her friends and how awesome and proud she was to have them. She also said it was a bonding thing between her girlfriends from our friend group, and the girls were the ones who performed. However, given her post-reception 180, it really surprised me in comparison to her pre-talent show mindset. A few people commented that she didn't need to have a talent show to read the poem she made for the wedding. She could have just read it any time as the bride. The reason I'm writing this post is because of something else that came up and led to a conversation. We had a vacation coming up, but she no longer wants to go on it. In the time since my first post, she's continued to have random mood swings due to thinking about Kate. Sometimes that's venting about how Kate would have nothing without her, or getting really quiet and distant, even while eating. She's also still upset at her girlfriends who she vented to about Kate. But when they disagreed and called her out for being bitter over a talent show no one forced her to have, she told me to cut off our friend group, along with blocking the producer and girlfriends too. When I disagreed, she became distant and said I was choosing them over her. When I asked Kate why this bothered her so much, she said that she tried to publish in the past a novel and that she didn't get any hand-me-downs. But when I reminded her that my friend was a producer on the side in his basement, she said, I should have known better to invite him because I should have known that he would have liked Kate's song. When I told her that I wouldn't block the producer or entire friend group, she said I was entitled like Kate and that she wanted a break because I didn't care about her. I told her that I love her, but I didn't think it was healthy to cut everyone off. I also told her that she should be happy for her friend because Kate was really grateful, but she didn't seem to care. She has since gone to stay with her parents and left some of her things in our apartment. I talked to my dad after she ignored my texts and calls for a few days, and he suggested bringing up an annulment because it had gone too far. Her parents have also ignored my calls, but I want to clarify Kate's text before I'm done. Kate wasn't arrogant or anything to Nancy. All she did was thank her for putting together the talent show that allowed her to network with the producer after the wedding, and she also offered to take her out to lunch as a thanks. There was no arrogance from Kate, and the producer is also engaged, as some people inquired about too. I'm just really surprised and hurt that her bitterness turned me into a bad guy for inviting my producer friend as if I was supposed to see into the future and not invite him. Update. We are currently in the process of a divorce. She's staying with her parents, and I've had some time to process and see things differently. I want to touch on two things that happened since my update. The first is a Facebook post she made about me and the guests. In her post, she said she was supposed to win and that it was an unwritten rule for the bride to win, as if wedding talent shows are normal. She also accused them of smiting her on her day when no one knew about the show beforehand except her participating friends. Then she accused me of taking Kate's side instead of comforting her as her new husband, but taking her side meant cutting off our friend group as she had in the aftermath. I don't know how her parents feel after she called out both sides of the guests, but I really don't care at this point. She wanted me to cut off my friend, Edward, and I wasn't going to do that. I talked to Edward recently about everything, including how she wanted to cut him off, and he couldn't believe how much it affected her. Nancy and I watched a football game at his house with him and his fiancée a few months back, and he has a day job in an office. When I told him about how Nancy was jealous of Kate's big break, he couldn't believe it and said that he planned to let Kate use his audio interface to plug into her guitar and record a high-quality instrumental of her original song along with his microphone too. He also said he wasn't great at mixing and was taking online courses to learn, so he was going to suggest that she commission someone to mix and enhance the files they'd record because he was far from a professional. He's a really chill guy, but he couldn't stop laughing over how Nancy thought that he was all that. He only wanted to use his interface to give her a high-quality recording after learning that she didn't have equipment and recorded her original on her phone. He and his fiancée planned to have her over for dinner, just like they had me and Nancy over for football, and recorded in the basement afterwards. Looking back in hindsight, it's crazy how you can be blinded to things, but I never imagined just how crazy she could get. I didn't say this in my first 2 posts because I thought it might overshadow her actions, but she sometimes posts about women empowerment on her socials, and I recently thought about that for one reason. When I asked her why she wanted to have a talent show, she said she wanted to emphasize the importance of having good friends because they were important to a relationship. But as I look at it now, perhaps it was never about that. Nancy was bothered the second that Kate's song got a better reception than her, and she doubled down when she vented to 2 of her girlfriends after the wedding, who called her out for being jealous, and that made her demand I also cut them off. Am I the jerk for allowing the police in my home? So over the summer, my husband's son, Jay, stays with his mom. He's 16. He gets home and gets everything ready for school. I noticed his mom gave him a new gaming system and I didn't say anything as he put it in his room. It's not uncommon for his mom to buy him things. The police show up at my house and ask to see both me and Jay. His dad is working. I let the police come in and they asked about his gaming system, and I tell him sure, that I saw him unpack it. Once Jay goes into the living room, I'm told that it's stolen. I freak out. I yell at Jay and the police arrest him and tell me I can come get him after the booking process. It will take a few hours. I let them take Jay and the gaming system. I was so overwhelmed with everything. I called my husband and he starts yelling at me because I let the police in the house and to take Jay. I got an earful about it and my husband goes to the police station and it takes a long time for him to come home with Jay. My husband sends Jay to his room and yells at me about how I let this happen. I should have not let them into the house, and I shouldn't have told them Jay was home. I said why? He acts like it was common sense, and I should have found out more information. He then goes on to call me names. The fight turns into me saying, how was I supposed to know how to act? I was taught better than to cover for a criminal. My husband says Jay is not a criminal. I pointed out he was literally just arrested for stealing. My husband told me to get out. I'm staying with my sister and her husband right now because of this. They're just as much in shock as me because they never would have thought to be rude to the police either and not let them in. You're the jerk. In the future, do not talk to the police. Get a lawyer and only talk to them with your lawyer present. You should not have allowed them in without a warrant, and you should not have allowed either yourself or your stepson to talk to them without a lawyer. And you really should not have allowed your stepson to talk to the police without one or the other of his parents there. Just to be clear, Jay was accused of a crime, not convicted of one. So for you to assume he's a criminal automatically would bother me too if that were my son. Plus, you don't know the exact circumstances as to how the console was obtained. His mom could have bought it from a third party for all you know. So again, who are you to call him a criminal when you just made an assumption based off what the police told you? You failed Jay in a big way. Sorry, you're the jerk. You're the jerk. Never, 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 never let the police into your house without a warrant. Never let the police talk to your kid without you or your lawyer. It may only be a simple misunderstanding. The chances of the cops being crooked or planting something to make a case may be slim, but if that slim occurrence should happen and the police decide to ruin your day, you can lose everything you own to civil forfeiture, and your entire reality can come crashing down because you were trying to not be rude. The police are not your friends. You can be civil, but do not let them in the door, because no matter how nice you are still considered a possible perp. Wait, OP is not the jerk for not knowing Reddit's rules of engagement with the police. People acting like everyone knows this. Meanwhile, in the real world, normal people let cops in. Get out of here with all these you're the jerk votes. I agree. I'm from the Netherlands, and I would also let the police in, even offer them tea or coffee. I'm really wondering how the US can be the land of the free with all those reactions. Exactly. I was looking for a comment like this. Belgian here. The police are here to help us. I would let them in, but apparently the US is a completely different story. To all the people saying she's the jerk, basically, you're the jerk. The police didn't randomly show up at her house. They didn't randomly figure the kid had stolen property. They had a reason why. They explained it to her, and she, being a reasonable person, did what was right. Too many people watching too much television thinking that asking for a lawyer will stop the police from doing their job. It doesn't. How many people have lawyers standing by on retainer? And no one is addressing the kid either stole, had stolen property, or both. And the husband is a major jerk. His kid is a criminal, allegedly, but instead of dealing with that, he tosses his wife out. Bad move. She did the right thing. I wonder how many of you would change your views if it was your $1,000 gaming system that was stolen. Can I just say, what the heck? If the police knock on my door in a home that I own where I know I'm following the law, I'm going to let them in, because that's what law-abiding citizens do. If someone living in my home is a thief or a criminal, that's their problem. Don't bring it into my home. OP, you're not the jerk. Your husband and your stepkid are for putting you in a position where they would want you to lie to the police. If you don't want problems with the police, then quit breaking the law. It's not what law-abiding citizens do. It's what naive citizens do. You are not some noble person. You are a fool. Okay, so because I choose to not break the law and I would allow law enforcement in my home, I'm the fool? Okay, buddy, I see your logic. You sure told me. I'm not calling you a fool, but you have a very naive mindset here. Please do some research on this subject. Most people in law enforcement and the judicial system follow the same advice and tell it to their families and friends. Don't talk to the cops without an attorney, period. Doesn't matter what you did or didn't do. Innocent people go to jail every day. Many get wrongly convicted and serve prison time. It can all start with a legitimate mistake or misunderstanding. Doesn't have to be malicious on the cop's part, though it often is. Anything you say can and will be used against you if it will help solve a case. I've seen it play out in a courtroom. It happens every single day. From a game theory standpoint, yes, you are a fool. You have nothing to gain by allowing them in. Absolutely nothing. You don't get a gold star for going along or an X mark for not. There is no citizen scorecard. If they have evidence, they can present it to a judge for a warrant. It's not disrespectful in any way to demand a warrant. If the charges have merit, they can convince a judge. Yes, you are a fool. You're putting faith in someone for no other reason than they're wearing a uniform. I back the blue in most cases, but will absolutely not give one the chance to change my mind. I don't break the law either, but I will always exercise my rights. You are a fool, and a pretentious one at that. My Karen wife demanded I pay for her friend's bill at dinner. I, 24 male, and my wife, who's 24 female, are a newlywed couple. My wife has 4 friends who she has been really close with since high school. For a celebration, my wife decided to go to an expensive steakhouse. The day comes and we go in separate cars there. We all eat and my wife slides the bill, $700 plus, and proceeds to say, "The man should always pay for the wife and her friends." I laugh awkwardly and ask her why. She says, because I'm the man. I tell her that the only other person I would be paying for would be you and me. Her friends proceeded to laugh at me, calling me a broke husband. I stand up and I put 2 $100 bills there for my wife and I's food, and I leave. My wife gets home and she starts screaming at me, saying that I made her feel embarrassed, how she promised her friends I'd pay, and that her friends made fun of her on the ride home for marrying a man who can't even pay the bill. I decided to pack a bag and head to my friend's house. I told my parents and my friends, and they say that I should have just paid it. Now I'm having second thoughts if I overreacted. Am I the jerk? Edit. I've read some comments asking if my wife has ever acted like this before, and no, she hasn't. That's why I just laughed awkwardly. The only other time she did this was when I didn't pay for her mom's food, which happened when we first started dating, and it was the first time she ever screamed at me like that. Instead of escalating it, I just left. And when we do argue, it's not a screaming match. For how long we've dated? I've known her since freshman year of high school, and we got together junior year. We've been together for over 8 years. I read some comments and decided to talk to her tomorrow about what happened, why she did that, etc. I do recognize that I didn't pay the full amount of me and my wife's food. I do take fault for that. I should have added another $50 to $75 to make it the price of 2 people. For the people who say I forgot to tip, I go there regularly with my coworkers. We each pay for our own plate, and I always leave a good tip. Not the jerk. Your wife should have talked to you about it before telling her friends that you'd pay, not assume. Dude, everyone in this scenario is a jerk except for you. Wow, the audacity to just casually push over $700 bill and then say, well, the man should always pay for his wife and her friends. It sounds to me like your wife doesn't want a spouse. She wants a sugar daddy who will treat her and her friends, and when you pushed back, she blew up in an attempt to manipulate the situation in her favor by playing on your emotions. You embarrassed me. Your family and friends must think that emotional and financial mistreatment, guilting you and trying to force you to pay for her and her friends' food with no prior warning, is cool. Get better friends and seek marriage counseling or a divorce if this is frequent behavior. Not the jerk in the slightest. Not the jerk. The man is supposed to pay, huh? Yeah, we used to be proud to do things like that. But that was back when we were the heads of the households and we were able to lead our families the way God instructed us to. These days, at least here in America, attempting to lead your family down a righteous path will only result in you divorced, paying alimony, child support, and endless therapy bills for your kids. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Just when I start gaining a bit of faith in humanity, these stories make me lose it again. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my son's free room to my cousin who's living with us? Me, 36 male, and my partner, 38 male, have 2 kids, Luke, who's 18, and Jay, who's 15. Some background info. We took the boys under our care when they were 8 and 11. Before they came with us, they had been in different families and group homes for over a year. It was hard for Luke to understand that they were with us for good and that he had his own room and family. Me and my partner knew that he still sometimes has insecurities about it, and a recent one was about him leaving for college. We explained to Luke that even if he was 18 and leaving the house, he would still have a room and a place at home, be it now or in 10 to 25 years. That he would still be our kid even when he's 40, and we will always be here for him. Now the issue. My cousin, who's 42, recently broke up and needed somewhere to live for her 2 boys, who are 16 and 12. Me and my partner have a house that's big enough, and we agreed to host them free of charge for 6 months until she gets her bearings back. For the house, me and my partner have a kind of master bedroom with our bedroom, bathroom, and office. Our boys have their own room, and they share a bathroom, and my cousin's boys have the guest room with a bathroom. My cousin has a room on the ground floor. It's not big, but she has a space for her bed, a desk, and a wardrobe. Last week, we got the keys for Luke's flat, and we started the process of furnishing it. He will officially move in next week and will start uni the week after. This weekend, my cousin asked when Luke's room will be empty. I told her that it will not be, that he will only take his clothes, books, decorative items. Basically, his room will stay the same, and he will only take what he needs. She then asked how she will be able to move in the room with all his stuff still there. I told her that she won't, that it will still be his room. He will still come home on some weekends and holidays. She then complained about the fact that she was living in a storage room, that she was the only one without her own bathroom, and that it was unfair of us to have an empty bedroom in our house and not give it to her. Me and my partner were very firm in our decision, but my mom and aunt called me and told me that it was a bit unfair of us to not offer proper accommodation for my cousin, and that Luke could do without a room for a few months now that he has his flat for the school year. I disagree. For me, it's more than a bedroom. It's what it represents. It's his own place for him in our home, and it's something I want him to have for as long as possible. I've been called selfish and that I was coddling him too much over this, so I would like outsider perspective. Not the jerk. You're a better man than I. As soon as she started involving other family members, I would have told her to pack her crap up and get out of my house. The boys would be welcome to stay if she chooses. They didn't do anything wrong, but mom's gotta go. You have been more than accommodating. Not the jerk. Your cousin is being ungrateful and entitled. She's getting a place for her and her kids rent-free for 6 months. It's much more important for your son to keep his room than for her to have a big room. She can have the big room when she's paying for it. Shut down this conversation once and for all. You didn't promise this room to her, and make sure she knows that. Well, what do you think? Should OP let his cousin have the room or not? Please let us know. Life tip. Never let anyone move in with you, family or not. I've just told my wife, who scares me, that I want a divorce. I'm not sure how I let it get this bad. I, 40 male, just told my wife, who's 43, this week that I want a divorce, and I'm buzzing with pride and happiness. We've been together 12 years and have 2 sons who are 6 and 2. When we met, all was well. We had jobs in the same industry and we traveled a lot. But very quickly, it became clear that my wife doesn't have any tolerance or even understanding for things that are not done the way she wants them to be. She idolizes her childhood and is very close to her mother and sister. Admittedly, she grew up in a very close, large family and had a pretty great childhood. But as an adult, this has morphed into a fanaticism with things being done normally. To her, normally means the way she would do them or how her mother did them. Ironically, her mom is super chill and not at all like her. Over the years, this annoyed me, but it became way worse once our kids were born. Everything had to be done as she wanted it in the house. I couldn't choose how to dress them because I didn't pick the right blend of colors. If I packed lunch and snacks for school, she would change the snacks to the ones that she wanted. That was still the short end of the wedge. The major issue is I wake up early in the morning, 5:30 a.m. I always have and I love it. I also do fine at night on little sleep, whereas my wife is a demon if she doesn't get 8 hours. That means that I take care of 99% of kids waking up at night. I do 99% of morning prep, lunch boxes, breakfast, getting dressed, for which she chooses the clothes the night before. I always take the kids to school. Another reason I do this early is that if I do it when she's awake, I get criticized for using the wrong spoon to serve the food, or using the wrong milk for oatmeal, or not cleaning up every tiny spill the second it happens, or using the wrong dish rag, etc. Every criticism is exasperated and aggressive. She's right on some of them, but it's a constant barrage, so I tune her out. I've even been told going to the bathroom is a problem because they feel me being awake. The issue is that our oldest loves to wake up early with me. It's a really cool time for us. We have breakfast, we watch the news, we talk about nerdy stuff. But she won't have it. She insists he has to stay in bed until 6:30. I wouldn't mind, but it's hard for him. He hates it. He cries and moans and whines and just wants to be up and about. I'm exactly the same. Now that our second is doing the same, she has begun blowing up at me aggressively. The other day, she woke up at 6 and accused me of just putting them in front of the TV in the morning and that our eldest is short because he doesn't sleep enough. They get 1 hour of TV during the holidays and I come up with the vast majority of outing ideas. He's quite short for his age group, but nothing out of the ordinary. And I finally snapped. I was getting yelled at again in front of both of the kids. I just said enough. I calmly said I wanted a divorce and that she would never speak to me like that again. We're away from the house until next week, but I already contacted a lawyer. I'm so happy. It will suck in the short term and then be such a relief. I can't wait to have my own place and the kids on my own half of the time. Her response. So this happened while we were on holiday at her family's in Portugal. Because we're here and she's surrounded by her people, she hasn't blown up yet. She's been distant. We're sleeping in different rooms, but nothing major. When we go home next week and she realizes I'm committed to what I'm doing, oh boy, it's gonna Krakatoa for sure. Prior discussions and counseling. A lot of people are asking about this. I did try to confront her about her behavior. I tried calmly when I was feeling good to explain to her how I felt. She literally told me, "My issues are more important than yours." I tried angrily when I had enough. It turned into a war of words. I tried sadly when I was at my wit's end. She didn't care. Therapy. We went to therapy a few times together and each wrote a list of things for the other to work on. She wanted me to learn how to cook and work out. I now do 70% of the cooking since 2 years, and I play paddle 3 to 4 times a week. I asked her to learn to compromise and tidy the house more. None of that ever happened. She always said she had no time to tidy because of her job and the 2 kids. Funny how I found the time. I also went to therapy alone and worked a lot on building up my confidence, standing up for myself, and setting boundaries. I'm sorry, OP, but let me tell you, as someone who came from a dysfunctional family with a mother that went off on my dad for more than 30 years, I wished my parents had divorced sooner. It's better to have 2 separate parents, but with good co-parenting skills, than 2 living together in a house like this. I walked on eggshells with my mother, and soon enough, my brother became the same narcissistic image of her. Am I the jerk for wanting to keep an expensive birthday gift that makes my boyfriend uncomfortable? I, female, just turned 25, have a friend, Logan, who's 25, and we've been friends since we were 7 to 8 years old. I have a boyfriend, Matt, who I've been dating for 7 months. My birthday was last week, and I had a dinner party for some friends before we all went out to a club. There were 8 of us, including Logan and Matt. We had a little bit of a gift opening before dessert, and Logan gifted me an old copy of The Great Gatsby. The book has a special significance to us because for many years, Logan and I lived in different countries. We kept in contact, but we didn't see each other in person for about 4 years. We finally got our parents to agree for me to fly to his country to visit in 2013. We were talking about what we were going to do on the visit, and I really wanted to go and see The Great Gatsby movie, which had just come out, as it's my favorite book. Logan had never even heard of it, and I said he had to read it before we went to see the movie. Logan was never academic, and to this day, it's the only fiction book he's ever read all the way through. Whenever I ask him to do me a favor, he always replies with, "I read The Great Gatsby for you, so I may as well," and it's a running joke. We always go big on birthdays, but this book means so much to me. The day after, Matt said he felt the book was an inappropriate gift because of how expensive it is. I tried to explain to him that it's just a sentimental gift and that the cost isn't the point, but Matt said he feels weird that another man gifted me something that costs more than his car. This argument went on for a long time, and Matt said that he thinks I should return the book, and if it means so much to both of us, then Logan can keep it. I told him to grow up. We've been having this fight on and off for a week. Matt's saying that it's reasonable for him to be uncomfortable, but I think he's just being a jealous kid. It's not like Logan gave me a great diamond necklace just to show off. He gave me something heartfelt that means the world to me, and I think that should be more important than the fact that Matt thinks it's outside what he deems as an acceptable budget. My mother is saying to give Matt the benefit of the doubt and maybe ask Logan to keep the book for now, and if one day Matt is more secure, I can take it back. My dad is saying Matt's an idiot. My girlfriends are split. This argument is just dragging on, and I'm leaving for my birthday trip tomorrow, and I just need some perspective on whether I'm being unreasonable wanting to keep the book. Edit. For everyone asking about the book, it's a 1925 edition, well known to be fairly rare. For everyone asking why I'm not dating Logan, or why I never did, I explained this in detail in several comments, but this is the most comprehensive and reflective answer. It's not that I don't absolutely adore Logan, I do. He's my favorite person in the whole world. But if you ask me why I'm not in a relationship with him, I don't have a concrete answer, because there's nothing about him I don't like, but it just never happened, and I think he would say the same thing. When I think of the way he was with his ex and the ones I've had, including Matt, I don't see us being that way or those people for each other. Update. So Matt and I broke up. He didn't end up coming on my birthday trip, but we were kind of talking on and off, and he sent me a text that dropped the L-bomb, and I didn't respond in kind. That was the last straw for him. Now that I think about it, that was the next hurdle that was coming. This just brought it forward, I guess. He'll be picking his things up over the weekend. I would like us to stay friends. I still like him so much, but I know that's not really up to me now. I told my mom about the breakup, and she apologized for making me feel like I was in the wrong about keeping the book. She said she was just so used to seeing me treat men as disposable, and because I had been with Matt so long, she thought maybe he might not be, and she got too caught up in that. I think hearing that I wasn't even ready to say I love him was a shock to her, and she realized she had been telling herself a story about him and me that wasn't what was playing out. On to me and Logan. Obviously, a whole wealth of opinions and advice was shared about our friendship, and honestly, going through the comments on the post was the first time I'd really ever thought that deeply about it. It brought up a lot of memories and feelings, and I did end up talking to Logan about it and telling him about the original post. I ended up making a note of some of the people's questions and asking him. I really wish I could include all of his answers here because I think his responses were pretty funny. Logan did not buy the book as a way to express romantic interest, and the plot was not relevant to his choice to purchase it. Logan has never wanted to date me. Feelings are complicated. I think that's everything. Thank you to everyone who responded. I laughed, I cried, I had an existential crisis. It was a wild ride. I feel like some context is missing that was in OP's comments. She and Logan are rich. Matt is middle class. The book is a 1925 copy with paperwork, and she considers it the same amount as spending money on an upscale restaurant or buying a car. She wouldn't answer comments about if Logan asked her out if she would date him after the initial shock, citing that she could speculate all she wanted, but it wouldn't matter because he wasn't going to ask her, though she very much denied they had feelings for each other and that Logan wouldn't confess after all these years. She's moved cities and followed Logan to college, including annoying her dad into driving 5 hours to support him at a career event. She and Logan also bonded heavily after both their partners divorced, and Logan was previously in a 4-year-long relationship that didn't work out. OP felt Matt was being too controlling over this event, and that if she conceded to this, Matt would ask her to give up other things or ask her to stop hanging out with Logan. She doesn't think Matt needs to trust Logan as long as he can trust her. She also answered comments asking if her relationship with Logan was normal for friendship, with very mixed responses, and did admit she could get behind the idea of her and Logan being codependent. And Logan also regularly pays for her to go on vacation. She also said she couldn't imagine her and Logan dating since they already knew everything about each other, and she viewed dating as getting to know someone. She said she didn't know what they would talk about on dates, but never admitted if she wanted to date Logan or not if he asked. Also, Matt is the first boyfriend she's had long enough to celebrate her birthday with, and Logan is somewhat territorial. I believe she also mentioned how even though it wasn't a competition, she's known Logan longer, and therefore he would always be more important and special, whereas boyfriends come and go, and she would feel the same about any partner with a childhood best friend. That kind of blew my mind a bit. Her mom is 100% right in that she treats men as disposable. She flat out says she does by admitting what you said. To each their own, but I absolutely would not want to be with someone who's always going to consider me second to someone else, and whose idea of partnership isn't, we're in this together, but, oh well, partnerships come and go. She should stick to casual dating if that's going to be her attitude. Yeah, she dated Matt for 7 months, but still didn't feel all that attached to him. 7 months, and she still wasn't ready to even say she loved him. But the guy he doesn't have to worry about is like a sweater that's amazing and beautiful and perfect, but she just doesn't wear. Jeez. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. Love triangles, not even once. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that she knew what she was getting into when she settled for my cast-off ex? If you had told me years ago that I would be in this situation, I would have laughed, but here we go. My boyfriend suggested that I get an outside perspective here. I, 26 female, was dating James, male 26, for most of college, and we had plans to get engaged after graduation. 2 months before graduation, I caught him planning to cheat. Nothing physical seemed to have happened yet, but he and another girl were making plans for a weekend that he told me he was going for a quick visit home. Cheating is an instant deal breaker to me, so it was over. Instead of having a fight, I didn't say anything, just waited till after he left for home, texted him proof that I had caught him, and good thing you're single now, have fun, then blocked him on everything and went for a girls' weekend with friends. James lost his mind and spent a month trying to get in contact with me or guilt friends into helping him. The few messages that got through, I trashed without even reading them. After a while, I thought he had finally given up. About a year later, my sister, 24 female, announces she wants to bring her boyfriend home to meet the family. We didn't realize she had a boyfriend, but my parents had a barbecue and told her to bring him. It was James. My parents were stunned but tried to pull it together. I just left. My sister called and tried to explain later that they had met at a party on campus and it was no big deal since I broke up with him. I told her I thought she could do better, but she could make her own mistakes. I just wouldn't be spending time around them. She got mad about it because our parents took my side. I don't get along with my sister at the best of times, so avoiding them wasn't hard except on holidays. My parents caved and let him come to Thanksgiving and Christmas since they seemed serious. James seemed way too invested in getting back on my good side when he was around, and it apparently made my sister jealous because she started acting brattier than normal. This last weekend was a milestone birthday for my mom, and I thought it would be a good chance to introduce them to my boyfriend, Todd, who's 29. Mom gave it the okay, and Todd actually made a great impression on the family. James was there with my sister, and he was upset and left early. My sister called me later and yelled at me for upsetting James and trying to make him jealous to get his attention. I told her that she knew she was getting a cheat when she decided to date him, and he was no longer my problem. Since then, she's blown up social media, venting about it, and is refusing to see my parents for the holidays if Todd and I are there. My parents think she's over the top and acting out, but she's on their case so much they want to try and smooth it over and me apologize for what I said. But I think it was an apt description. Not the jerk. You can choose your friends and your boyfriends, but you can't choose your family. The sister and James are a perfect match for each other. Not the jerk. It almost appears that James is dating your sister to get back at you, and she is blissfully ignorant of that fact. Not the jerk. Your sister refuses to accept that not only did she get your cast off, he's also not worth the drama and issues this has brought to the family. If she's angry at you instead of him because he got jealous, then she's being ridiculous, and apologizing for it isn't going to make her see sense. Am I the jerk for buying my grandparents' house and doing my family out of their inheritance? So I, 28 male, used to take care of both my grandparents from the time I was roughly 19. My grandparents' health started to go downhill, and none of my 7 uncles or my mom really wanted to help out much, so I ended up moving back in with them to help out as much as I could. My grandpa was in a wheelchair, and my grandma had just gone into remission from cancer. Around 2020, when lockdown started to become a serious concern, my grandma was seriously wondering what would happen if her and my grandpa passed because they would not be able to live in their house that they had owned since around the mid-1960s. It is, according to my grandma, an old governor's mansion from the 1800s. It has 10 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms on 15 acres of land. When they bought it, it needed a ton of work, and they have spent the last 60 years making it a wonderful home, and both wanted to pass there in that house since they had raised all their kids there, and even some of the grandkids. It's a family hub, and everyone has grown up there. After one bad health scare with my grandpa realized that if she lost him, she would no longer be able to afford the house with losing half of her income. So I offered to buy the house from them. I have a fairly high-paying job for my area, and because I had been living there rent-free while taking care of them, I had quite a large savings. Originally, I told her I would just give her the money or help her out, but she didn't want charity, so she and my grandpa sold me the house for $90,000, roughly 10% of the property's value, and I would let her live there until she passed, which of course I would, because they knew I would keep the house in the family, and most of my uncles and my mom just wanted to sell it off for a quick buck. Only one uncle, Josh, knew about them selling me the house and didn't mind at all because me and him had almost exclusively done all the maintenance or the housework over the years. Unfortunately, my grandpa passed in April 2021, and after that, my grandma's youngest sister moved in to spend time with her because they were both widows and could emotionally support each other. So I took advantage of lockdown interest rates and bought another house about 10 minutes away so I could still be close by if she needed anything, but have my own freedom. Sadly, last week, my grandma passed, and after the funeral, the whole family gathered for her will reading. My uncles all got nice items. My uncle Josh got my grandpa's old Ford pickup. My mom got all of my grandma's jewelry. I got nothing, because I already got the house. The reading ended. All of my relatives were confused about the house and asked the lawyer, to which she said the house was already sold. Well, it didn't take long for them to put 2 and 2 together, and I'm now getting harassed by most of my family, saying I did them over. They needed the money from the sale of the house, and some have even threatened to sue me if I don't sell the house and give them their rightful inheritance. So, am I the jerk for doing them out of their inheritance? Update. I ended up talking to my Uncle Josh about what was going on with the other family members and the harassment over the house. And at about 8 o'clock tonight, he called everyone in the area and told them all to come to his house as the oldest brother for a family meeting. Everyone complied. When I arrived, a couple of my uncles had some choice words, but Josh told them to just shut up, went into his room, and brought out my grandparents' original will before the most recent one that they had left with him. In the will, it stated that he would inherit the house 100%, and the reason was because of all the work he had done to it. Over the years, he had put in a pool, fixed the cracking foundation, replaced the roof, and so much more, and that my grandparents had involved him in the sale to make sure that he was okay with not getting the house. He had told them that he didn't want a big house to take care of, and with him retiring soon, he wanted to take his money and travel and not worry about what was happening to their house. This basically squashed any complaints. So this has been a roller coaster of a day, but thank you everyone for the kind words. I'm ready for a nice drink. My Karen in-laws are demanding I have more kids even though I don't want to. My husband and I have a 4-year-old daughter together. She is our one and only, and I was done after her. I got sterilized earlier to prevent falling pregnant again. My in-laws are unhappy about this because my husband is their only kid. They've said I was too rash in making the decision because I'm young, 30, and that I should think about my daughter and them and how a bigger family is always better when you have the choice. They told me it was unfair, that I was wrong. They deserve more grandkids. That was when I told them what I did. For context, our daughter was a much wanted and very planned baby, but the first 18 months of her life were the worst of mine. She was diagnosed as being a high-needs baby, and that is underplaying it. She never stopped crying, and there was no clear cause. We were in and out of the ER with her. We never got a break because nobody could stand to babysit her for us with the crying. My in-laws were around, and they would leave because it bothered them so much to hear her cry like that. A few times, they would tell me to stress less, but I couldn't leave the house with her without getting looks or comments from strangers. We were spending so much money taking her to the hospital and the doctor to try to figure out what was wrong. We paid for tests, we paid for all kinds of different formulas and other things suggested. It was exhausting. It got so bad, my husband lost his job because he was showing up to work exhausted and unable to function. I was unable to function. I would hear her cries in my sleep, and I ended up needing therapy because for another year I would fall asleep and wake up in tears because it still haunted me. We're not sure how or why it stopped, but thank goodness it did, because I was hanging on by a thread. After our daughter, though, I could not stand the thought of experiencing that again. Nobody could tell us what it was, why it happened, just that there are documented cases of some babies like that. It's not a comfort to me or us. My in-laws do not go after my husband like this, I guess because he's not the one who got sterilized himself. But I said what I did because it's true. They were no help to us, and they don't owe us that. But with them demanding more grandkids from me, they should be willing to face up to the fact that they were no help when we needed it the most. They're mad. My husband told them I was right, but they claim I had no right to say that to them. I never normally would have, which is making me doubt myself. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If they wanted more grandkids, they should have had more kids. Your decision to have kids is between you and your husband. They are your husband's parents, and therefore he should be intervening and telling them to quit their crap. The more complaining they do towards you is merely building a wall between you and them, brick by brick. Part 2 of parents trying to take my house from my brother. They broke my locks to move in while I wasn't home. Some parents can't explain why they make choices like child favoritism. So all they can do is try and stand by the kid that they backed, which is exactly what my parents tried to do. And I've practically destroyed their lives for it. Not in the legal sense, but more so an emotional one. So after I kicked my parents and brother and sister-in-law out for trying to force me to hand over my new house to my brother, I immediately went to my social media and I told the story to the whole family. It spread pretty fast, but you won't find it now because it all got deleted some time ago and I put my own profile on private. I posted about it because I knew that this was the first thing my family would do when they got home and they'd try to twist the event to make me the villain. And I was exactly right. But I had about an hour to get started before them, and I had video evidence to back up my story about what they had done. No, I don't plan on showing the video here, so don't ask. Being preemptive worked because I got a fair number of family members on my side right away. My parents, brother, and sister-in-law must have been all set to write their own posts, but it was too late. So they didn't even bother trying to lie much. My parents, Dan, and sister-in-law had a few flying monkeys supporting them, but not much else. Plenty of others knew how entitled they already were. So what happened was something they all quickly understood and accepted. There was one person in particular that called me. I don't know who they were, but they ranted at me that I was a horrible brother and I needed to make way for a real family man. I just ended the call and blocked the number. This didn't repeat. The week went by and my parents showed up with Dan at my front porch just like they said they would in their prior ultimatum. They rang my doorbell like crazy and also pounded on the door until I finally answered. I opened it just a crack and they tried to shove their way in again, but I'd installed a couple of latch chains that prevented it and even braced my body against the door for good measure. My father and brother demanded I let them in, but I said I was recording everything on camera and would call the police if they tried to force their way in again. My mother calmed them down and then in her most sickly sweet tone asked me if I was ready to let my brother move in. I told her and the rest of them to buzz off and to never come back. My mother put on the crocodile tears and asked me why I can't just do this for Dan because he's my beloved brother. I laughed and then bluntly said I do not love him as a brother because he treated me like crap for years and they only encouraged him to do so. They are terrible parents and he's a terrible brother. Then I told them to leave or I'd be calling police ASAP. They all left surprisingly easily, apart from my mother's loud crying and the others giving me dirty looks. One could say making them leave was suspiciously easy. I thought the whole mess was over, but I guess I should have taken them more seriously, because they had other stupid plans. I came home later that week on Friday evening to find a moving truck and my brother's minivan parked in my driveway. It was Dan and his family there moving stuff in. He just waved to me with a grin on his face when I saw him. I was furious and told him and the rest of his family to stop. But sister-in-law smugly said to me that, like it or not, they were moving in. And then in the most fake way, while tilting her head and puckering her lips, she said that it was okay because my mommy allowed it, and I should always listen to what my mommy tells me. I seethed with rage just hearing those words and looking at her smug face. So I locked myself in my truck to call the cops right away. When they realized what I was doing, sister-in-law started pounding on my window and yelling at me to stop, and that I can't do this to her because she and Dan need the house. And she cried, "Why can't you just do this for Dan?" I responded with, "Forget Dan. It's my darn house, not his." Then she threatened to key the side of my truck unless I stopped calling the police, all of which the 911 operator heard thanks to the window being slightly open. I told sister-in-law that if she damaged my truck, I'd sue her, and she was smart enough to retreat. When the police arrived, Dan and sister-in-law, along with their kids, had locked themselves in my house. I told the cops what had happened, as well as showing them my new driver's license that had my current address on it. Then when we went to my front door, I saw that they had changed the lock, and the old lock was laying on the porch with the center of it drilled out, and the drill they used was laying right next to it, with a complete Harbor Freight drill bit set. Could they have been any more stupid leaving evidence out like that? I pointed out the broken lock and drill, then gave the police a rundown on all of the events that happened prior. Well, I guess Dan called our parents over at some point after I arrived home, because they showed up while I was talking to the cops. My parents immediately lied and started saying that I had agreed to rent my house to my brother and his family. I said that was an easily provable lie, one way or another. So Dan and sister-in-law finally came out of my house with some papers in hand. They both looked super smug, like they had somehow outsmarted me. They had actually drawn up and printed out a fake rental agreement, but my signature was not on it. There was one, but it looked nothing like my handwriting. I don't think any of them have ever actually seen my signature, so that was incredibly stupid on their part. I told my parents and Dan that that was stupidly blatant fraud, and if the cops investigated, they'd easily figure that out. And I don't think going to jail or court would do them any good. It could even make Dan lose his job, which is his only means of providing for his family. I also said I would get a lawyer and sue for damages if anything of mine was lost, stolen, or broken, and I'd call the authorities too for good measure. Dan went white and looked really scared when I said all of that, but my mother got between us and doubled down about how I should just do this for Dan and live in the darn camper so that they can finally have a family home to themselves. I yelled at her that if she thought it was a good idea, she could do it for Dan herself and let Dan have her house instead to himself. The cops separated my mother from me, and I said I wanted them all out right now, or I'll press charges. I shouted about how they had drilled out my front door lock to break in, the lease papers being obvious fakes. They badly forged my signature, and I have recorded video of sister-in-law attacking me. Those are felonies, and I could really affect their lives with it if I wanted to. And if they didn't leave, that's exactly what I'd do. The only reason I hadn't already was for the sake of Dan's kids, so they have one chance to just get out. The moment my parents heard that, I think it finally clicked that they could not force me to do this for Dan. My mother surrendered and said she'd put an end to this. Then she went over to sister-in-law and spoke to her quietly for a minute while my father spoke to Dan. Sister-in-law instantly started loudly crying and ripping up the fake rental papers into tiny bits and tossing them like confetti, only to have an officer tell her to pick them up, or he'd cite them for littering. Both of the cops at this point had the "I don't get paid enough for this" looks on their faces. Dan starts telling his kids to load their stuff back into the moving truck. The kids were all crying, and the eldest was sobbing that he won't get his own room now. Sister-in-law and Dan gathered their kids up to try and make one last pathetic attempt to guilt me with the sad family routine. You know, where they all gather together in a sort of group hug while all facing one direction. I swear, I think they had practiced it beforehand. All of the kids had the same pleading look with quivering mouths. Sister-in-law kept rubbing her pregnant belly and tilting her head to look like a sad puppy, and my brother just made the saddest face he could possibly make and said, "Please don't do this. We need to be able to live here." But I didn't falter and told them to keep packing. All the kids and sister-in-law turned the crying up to 11, and Dan yelled at me, "Are you satisfied with yourself? You've denied us a home because you're too selfish to share and help out family." I ended up laughing like a maniac and retorting that what he was trying to do was taking, not sharing, and no amount of crying will make me let his family move in because he's no brother of mine anymore. He's just an entitled jerk who thinks he can take whatever he wants from me, like when we were kids. Dan started going off on me until the cops told him to cool it or he'd be in cuffs, regardless of if I wanted to press charges or not. He sucked in his lips and looked like a mix of afraid and supremely upset. I asked the cops if they could stick around until my parents, brother, and sister-in-law had all left, and they said they had no intention of going anywhere until this had been resolved. In fact, in the next few minutes, 2 cops became 4 as more drove in for whatever reason. That gave my parents some extra incentive to get moving. I made Dan give me the keys to the new lock he'd put on my front door, though I got another lock the next day anyway, because I didn't know if he had copies of the keys or not. He was really reluctant to hand them over. Then, instead of handing them to me, he actually threw them down the street and into a storm drain while saying to go get them myself. But one of the cops scolded him for that and made him go get them. He had to pull the grate off just to get at them, and he got pretty dirty in the process. When he got the keys back, he just grumbled, then slammed them down into my hand. I then told them all to leave and to never come back. My mother said I'd be disowned for this, as if that were some kind of threat to me, and I voiced that to them. Then in an overly sarcastically way, I said something along the lines of, "Oh no, that means I won't get to come to any holidays with you guys, where I always get treated like crap by you all anyway, because Dan has always been your obvious favorite. You treated me so badly when I was growing up that if Dan ever needs an organ donor, I wouldn't give him anything. So do like you always told me to do when I was mistreated by all of you, and just get over it." My parents were floored after I said all of that, and the cops were all looking pretty judgmental at them as well. I tell you, if you want to put nasty parents like mine on the spot, confront them in front of cops, because they'll likely not try anything really stupid then. My mother just started crying and walked away. My father just stood there looking like he wanted to get me, and Dan just held his kids in defeat. Oh, and sister-in-law was off having a tantrum in my front lawn. Soon enough, they all formed a line handing out boxes and got their stuff out of my house. Nothing had been unpacked yet, so it was all taken out pretty quickly. But while doing this, my mother kept saying it wasn't too late, and I could still do it for Dan several times, each time trying to bargain more and more to try to make me change my mind. She said that Dan could pay me rent if I let them stay, and when that didn't work, she said I could move back in with them to let Dan rent my house so I wouldn't have to share the building. I told her to shut up and keep packing boxes because I don't want Dan or his family around. I don't want his money, and I certainly don't want to live with him or my parents ever again after the way that they treated me when I was a kid. Making a deal with my parents would be like making a deal with the devil to me. Sister-in-law ended up having another tantrum after hearing that and threw a box down, then sat on the ground to have a pity party because she didn't want to go back to sharing a house with my parents. And she just sat looking angry and sad there until everyone else was finished. She didn't even want to get up when it was time to leave. They finally got everything out of the house and into the truck. So before they left, I laid into my parents one last time about all of the crap that they put me through growing up. And with 4 cops being right there, they couldn't do much other than stand there and take it for once. I called them out on so many things that happened, and even pointed out how they couldn't just do something nice for me, like letting me stay over with my camper when I was homeless and trying to get back on my feet, how they let Dan and sister-in-law ridicule me and call me a bum. Well, who's the bum now? They wanted to kick me out of my own house so Dan could stay in it free of charge, yet when I needed a place to go, they wanted to gouge me for more than I could afford just to park my camper when they knew I was out of the job. There were more extremely judgmental stares from the cops when I said all of that, so I put my parents on the spot one more time and asked them what I ever did other than being born to deserve being treated so badly. Because when I finally have a bit of success in life, they want to snatch it away from me for their favorite kid, since they'd rather I give everything to Dan and have nothing for myself. I bought my house using the money that I earned. I owed them nothing, and I won't be asking anything from them ever again, because clearly I will never be anything more than a doormat or a cash cow in their eyes. I got no answers from them. They just stood there looking like a fish out of water. So I continued ranting and asked them what in God's name made them think they were such good parents after all of that. My father's face was red, but more from embarrassment than anger this time, and my mother was crying that she was a horrible person. I bluntly agreed that she is a horrible person. They all are, and they knew it. But if I'd called them out on all this stuff in private instead of in public, they'd just get mad at me and still act like I'm in the wrong. They just kept up the denial for so long that it became a part of who they are. My mother buried her face in my father's jacket to cry, and my father looked more defeated than I've ever seen him. Dan and his family avoided me entirely as they finished putting everything back in the moving truck. I made sure nothing of mine was stolen. Not that I'd had a chance to get much furniture yet. I was lucky to even have a couch at that time. They all got back into their vehicles, and sister-in-law just stood staring at me with malice until my brother finally got her to drive the minivan home. and as soon as they were all gone, I got back online again and spilled the beans about what happened. My parents were too embarrassed to even try and defend their actions this time, and while the family was somewhat split before this incident, it was now a landslide in my favor. Nearly all of the family has sided with me after this incident, and those who haven't simply aren't siding with anybody. No matter how much my parents previously tried the "we did it for Dan" line, no one listened anymore. So any remaining familial support that they had is now gone. Many in the family who I expected wouldn't side with me did. That includes the former flying monkeys. So I guess they finally had enough. Around that time, I offered to host half the family at next Christmas Eve in my new house. My parents were not invited. I wasn't blocked on my brother and sister-in-law's profiles, surprisingly, and I saw sister-in-law had her fourth baby in early November. They're still living with my parents. I'm pretty sure they knew that I was watching because sister-in-law kept making passive-aggressive posts every couple of weeks or so about not having enough space while living with my parents, probably to see if she can still guilt me. And I'm sure it's driving my mother and father up the wall because they aren't getting any peace and quiet in their old age with 3 rowdy, obnoxious kids, a mentally unstable sister-in-law, my golden child brother, and a newborn baby in the house all at once. Perhaps they could move into a camper in their own backyard and let Dan take over the house completely. They might get some peace then. Yeah, they could do that for Dan. There was supposed to be more, but this post got way too long, so I'll be posting a part 3 later. That time, the company lawyers told me to contact law enforcement. This took place years ago, but still makes me laugh at the sheer stupidity of it all. It starts as all truly great sagas published on the internet begin, when I met a random guy through a friend at a bar in the city. Let's call the guy I met Mark for the purpose of this post. My friend had introduced me to Mark because for a few years leading up to that introduction, I shared an idea I had for a business with anyone who would listen. I was told Mark wanted to start his own business, had worked in the industry, knew a lot about the subject matter required, and thought my idea was good. Mark and I met up for a lunch. We hit it off. He said he'd start the business as the CEO and agreed to me taking a part-time operational role. I agreed to help solely in a part-time operational role because I couldn't afford to quit my day job. I put in 15% of the cash for 5% ownership since Mark was going to put in founder hours, 80 plus hours a week, and agreed to put up 85% of the cash, which was more money than I could afford to risk on a new venture. I worked part-time. I did what I said I would do. I even tried to be of assistance on things I had no experience with. I connected Mark with a fellow I had done business with before. We'll call him Paul. Paul and I got into a dispute ourselves. More on this later. Anyway, let's fast forward a few months, and I got into a dispute with Mark over stationery. Yes, stationery not being to his liking caused him to flip out. This was despite him picking the stationery out. Next up, the contract I got from Mark was not quite what we agreed. The legal work required a few months to get done, and I had expected delays, but when I finally got it, the paperwork didn't represent what I had agreed to own. Not only that, but my investment wasn't being acknowledged under the terms we had committed to when I put the money in. Now, as I said, I wasn't able to risk much money, and I only invested what I could afford to lose, so this wasn't a huge sum of money. I didn't want to make a big deal about it since the amount was small, and he began promising a new contract when the business could pay for the lawyers to make changes. I signed nothing. Then it worsened. Mark and I start to fight anytime we're in a room together. As I think back, it's almost comical how angry he would get in my presence. I have other things to do with my time than squabble over stuff like stationery, so I worked on my areas of the business and hoped things would grow. I stopped in whenever I could and would help out regularly as needed with as little Mark interaction as possible. Paul would intervene sometimes when Mark would get particularly difficult to be around. Anyway, fast forward about 2 years, and Mark can't help but tell everyone who will listen that the business is going well. I have no idea how well things are going because Mark isn't giving me any updates. I get a call around Christmas from Mark. He wishes me a happy holiday, then drops the bomb on me that he wants to terminate my involvement and refund my investment. I decline the investment refund and say I'm happy to no longer work with him. In my head, I think it's kind of hilarious that he thinks this will just end that easily, but I say nothing to that accord to him. Mark and I hang up, with him aggravated about my refusal to take the refund on my investment. Mark then sends me an email that I had resigned. This had no basis in fact, but certainly was creative about what we had just discussed. I correct him immediately in a reply stating that he wanted to no longer work together and that I can see that being the case, but want to discuss my investment. A few days later, Mark demands I come pick up a check for a reimbursement of my investment. I do not come and get it. Next thing you know, the company attorney huffs and puffs and tries to scare me with some strongly worded letter. This is the same idiot attorney who messed up my contract to work on the business and my investment agreement. Let's call this attorney Mr. Cohn for the sake of the story. I send an email response to Mr. Cohn that he messed up. The company seems to be doing well, that I hear rumors about how well, that I want to be on this for the foreseeable future, and I will not take a 1-1 cash for what I put in. The attorney then emails me back, stating in writing that Mark never accepted my electronic transfer into the company account. Instead, Mark has another company he accepted the money into. A company that's different from the name of the recipient on my electronic transfer. A company that would be committing wire fraud to accept the money I sent. On that note, I did some sleuthing online. I found out Mark had been forming one company every month or two. Then there were media reports and documents he let slip and shared drives he forgot I had access to from when we agreed to work together. Mark was too cheap and stupid to pay for tech help, so he was using my shared folders I had created, and I certainly wasn't obligated to turn off the shares if he wanted to work out of them. Those documents showed me Mark had recently raised money in the company I sent the payment to at 200 times the valuation I had bought into it at, and Mark didn't disclose my investment to the new investors. Mark had, however, put me on documents showing my ownership to previous investors. Not on documents I had ever seen before, but documents he had been sending around. When I share my suspicions that Mark is committing wire fraud with Mr. Cohn, I'm told I'm the one breaking the law by knowing anything about the investment documents the company has used. Mr. Cohn tells me that by not picking up my check, I will not be entitled to any money and to contact law enforcement if I think something illegal has happened. He cautions, though, that I'll be the one in trouble. Cue the malicious compliance. I let the different respective members of the Securities and Exchange Commission, along with law enforcement, know what happened to me. I provided them all of the documents I had from the matter. It took about 5 years for this investigation to conclude, for charges to be brought, for a trial to conclude, and for Mark to go to jail. They say government is slow, but they aren't kidding with just how slow. Maybe it was slow because Mark was running a large, tens of millions of dollars large, fraud. Anyway, Mark will be serving time for about 30 felony charges they found uncovering the details of his Ponzi scheme. He will be away for a long time. I never did anything wrong. With the information I was able to provide, Mr. Cohn ended up getting disbarred. There were other things Mr. Cohn did outside of what is shared in this post that I cannot share, or it could help to identify me to the folks involved. The investigators credited me with bringing the wire fraud to their attention. I lost my money in this ordeal, but gained an education, and I got to help bring down a crook. The sheer stupidity of Mark is that he didn't even follow the business plan I had. He just used it as a story to convince investors to give him money. It's a business model that works very, very well. It took a few more years, but I'm now in a position to be pursuing this business full-time with people of high integrity who all work together to ensure each other's success. We expect to have an extremely profitable year in 2023 after proving the business model worked in 2022. Have me sign a weird contract or I fail? Okay. Last semester, I had to take a class from a professor who wasn't bad as being incompetent, but definitely was one of those, I have a new way to teach that I developed kind of professors. She also gave the vaguest instructions on what she did want in her turned-in work and didn't believe in study guides as she wanted to encourage reading the material. Honestly, I got more out of the book than her class, and buying the book alone would have been far cheaper. Trying to get direction out of this lady was worse than trying to pull teeth, met with mostly, do your best. On top of this, she apparently handed out a grading contract on the first day to everyone we had to sign in return. I missed this due to being sick, so I didn't get it until later. Said contract basically boiled down to indicating what grade you wanted at the start of the semester. You either met the conditions for that grade or you would fail. So basically, by saying you wanted an A, you either met the qualifications for an A or you could fail, even if you could have gotten a B or a C instead. If you decided to play it safe with saying you wanted a C, even if you exceeded and would normally get a B or an A, you would just get a C. So to cut out a lot of the drama of the semester, 2 things. First being I had surgery at the beginning of the semester. Second is I was working full-time while at school to pay for said school. Both ended up with me missing a lot of work, and normally I would just cut my losses, except I'm very close to my degree and my professor said I could make up the work. Otherwise, I would fail and need to retake the class anyway in the spring. So I decided I had nothing to lose and buckled down with basically getting next to no sleep for weeks. I had over a month and a half at least amount of work and 2 weeks to do it in. Now finally, this is where the malicious compliance comes in. During an exchange where I was emailing my work, she told me I still hadn't done her contract, which at that point, only a few weeks out from finals, I didn't get the point. But she told me either I did the contract or I would fail. She also had let slip that not doing the final would drop you a letter grade, but not fail you. The only exception to her weird contract that wasn't in it, and one I confirmed very deliberately in writing. At this point, I was bone tired and honestly forcing myself to continue working on anything, which may not sound like much, but with my mental health history was Herculean effort. I just wanted the pain to stop and a full night's rest. So I decided if not doing the final just dropped me by a letter grade, then I would just do the work for a B and end up with the grade I thought was fair for how the semester had gone. This meant for even more work, but it also meant I didn't need to worry about a final and could finally just sleep, which I explained as much to the professor when she asked me why I didn't have a final turned in on the last day. That so far has been the last I ever spoke to or seen of her. Imagine my surprise when I actually ended up with a B in her class. Personally, I take this to be her never wanting me in her class again, and I don't know if it makes me a jerk overall. But I do know she apparently has it now that not doing the final is an automatic D. So sorry to anyone who got her after me. Am I the jerk for telling my son he has to go to university, get a job, or get out? My wife and I have 3 kids. They're 17, 15, and 10. My oldest has no intention to do anything after high school, at least none that he's made clear to us. So I gave him the same ultimatum my parents gave me. Either go to university, get a job, or get out. I chose to travel the world for 2 years. I had a lot of sailing experience, and my father had a lot of friends in that community, so I was able to sail around the world earning money and working my butt off. It wasn't a 2-year vacation. My family is well off, and I could have chosen an indolent life, but I knew I would be a disappointment if I chose that. So when I got back, I enrolled in university and eventually went to work for the family business. My wife thinks that I'm being unfair to our poor baby boy by throwing him out into the world. I'm not. We have the money to pay for his university. We have the money for all 3 kids. My middle child will probably end up with a good chunk of it in her pocket. She's on track for an academic as well as a golf scholarship. The 10-year-old is 10, and who knows what he's going to do, but he knows the plan. We have not been secretive about this rule. My wife and I agreed that we would raise productive members of society before we got engaged. Her and my son think I'm being cruel to expect him to fend for himself at 18. I've offered him multiple opportunities to do other things. He has no interest in anything beyond his computer. I'm at a loss. I don't think I'm wrong for expecting an adult to be an adult. My parents have already told him that they will not be giving him any money if he isn't in school or working. My wife is threatening to use her salary to support him. I don't have any say in that. I won't actually kick him out of the house, but I will stop paying his bills and cut off our grocery budget by 20%. If she wants to work so he doesn't have to, then there's nothing I can do about that. It's not fending for oneself when the parent tells the kids, go to university, we pay for it, you stay under our roof, or work, keep your money to yourself, you stay under our roof, or choose to do nothing with your life and you'll have to fend for yourself. Not at all. You don't even give him ultimatums about what to study or what job to take. He could bum around from major to major or from minimum wage job to another while figuring out what he wants to do with his life, with all expenses paid. He's not going to get sudden inspiration on how to spend his adult life by staying home and doing nothing. Not the jerk for actually parenting your kid. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk or not? Please let us know. My Karen neighbor is trying to get my dog taken away. I, 22 female, and my partner, male 24, purchased our first home in January of 2022, and we absolutely love the neighborhood and our direct neighbors who are right next door. We're the youngest couple in this area, with most of the people being older or retired. We also have no kids. We just have a 2-year-old Siberian Husky who's my baby. The problems began as soon as we moved in, with complaints piling in, first about our lawn. The house was abandoned before we purchased it. Then there was a noise complaint about our dog. For a husky, she barely makes any noise, so I was surprised about the complaint, but I just let it go. About 9 months into living at the house, my partner purchased me an antique car which needed some work done before it could be driven. It was parked far into our long driveway, not yet tagged because we had just purchased it, and one tire was off to be fixed. The very next day, we got a nasty letter on our door from the city about an inoperable vehicle on our property that must be removed. We found this very strange, and after speaking with the inspector, who simply told us to move the car, we found out that there's a person in our neighborhood who keeps reporting us but remains anonymous. I got close with my closest neighbors and tried to ask them for advice on what to do. They both said the most likely person to be reporting us is the neighbor across from us, an old lady and her husband who live with their blinds wide open, just looking outside 24/7. Their daughter, a Karen in the making, drives around the neighborhood looking for people to report. My partner and I just happened to become the latest victims, and she apparently really hates us. I decided to just be nice to her and try to win her over with kindness. Big mistake. About 2 months ago, I fixed up my motorcycle and decided to take it out for a ride to enjoy the warm weather. While it idled in my driveway to warm up while I geared up, I saw the daughter come by with her kid to my neighbors across the street. The kid seemed very interested in the bike, so I gave a little wave and hopped on the machine to ride off. I enjoyed the ride, and when I returned and parked the bike in my driveway to do some basic maintenance, a police officer rolled up to my house. He claimed there was a complaint out about me riding recklessly, doing wheelies and burnouts, and being a danger to the neighborhood. I was completely floored and tried to plead my case that I went for a ride and I didn't even stay in the neighborhood. He let me off with a warning, and as he drove away, I noticed my neighbor standing at the window staring at me. From that point on, I decided to mind my own business and not act friendly to them. Fast forward to this past month. My partner and I had to travel to New York for my family, and we decided to take our dog with us. We had a wonderful time, and when we got back to our home, we only had 4 days to wash clothes and repack before heading off to California for more family time. Within those 4 days, my partner worked days and I worked nights, so that our dog was never left alone. Trust me, this becomes important. 3 days ago, I dropped my dog off with a trusted friend whose dog always plays with mine. I paid her $800 to watch my dog at her house for 2 weeks. My home is empty at this point, and I fly to California to enjoy a relaxing vacation. I get video and photo updates of my dog playing and having a blast staying with my friend. This morning, I get a text message from one of my good neighbors saying animal control stopped by my house, and she asked me if my dog was okay. I was extremely confused because I had just gotten a photo of my dog cuddled up on my friend's couch. I decided to call the city and see what was up. The city told me that there were multiple reports against me for neglect and improper care of my dog, and that a full investigation was going to be conducted against me. I was at a loss for words. I'm across the country right now, and this neighbor has stepped too far, trying to take my very spoiled and well-cared-for dog away from me. All my friends and next-door neighbors can vouch for how loved this dog is. So now I'm waiting to hear back from animal control to explain my case. I have no idea what's going to happen next if they try to take my dog or inspect my house. I'm exhausted and tired of the harassment by this neighbor. I'm hesitant to get pregnant out of fear that this neighbor would call the authorities and lie about me. I feel watched and unwelcome, and I'm not sure what to do. Any advice from those who have been through something similar is very appreciated. Is there anything legally I can do to make it stop? Update. My dog was taken to the shelter by my friend to be examined by a vet. They took photos as evidence, but released my dog back to my friend. I have not heard anything new about the investigation yet. I also requested Freedom of Information Act from my city to read the anonymous email that was sent. I was told my request would take 5 days to process and may cost me a fee to have access to it. It also remains anonymous, so I'll only be able to read what was written. Hopefully, I can use the words to somehow prove it was them. This is really frustrating, being far away, and I feel like I'm being treated like a criminal. Thank you all for the advice. I'm installing cameras and a fence as soon as I get back. This is harassment. Please keep a journal with dates and times of neighbor actions. Then contact the lawyer for a cease and desist letter. Your lawyer can help guide you in the future. Entitled lady tries to force me to leave a public lake. I force her to leave instead. This was a few years ago. I used to work as a detective for a local police department. I'm retired now, and this occurred when I was still employed there. In my life, I've always made every attempt to stay on the right side of the law, as I consider hypocrisy one of the worst traits for an officer of the law to have. I owned a nice ski boat, and in my spare time, I enjoyed taking my family to the local public lake to use the boat and tube, water ski, swim, etc. My kids were ages 12 and 13 at the time, and they really got a kick out of this. They wanted to go nearly every day off that I had all summer long. One day we were at the lake, and after a few hours, my daughter mentioned she needed to use the bathroom. The lake also had a public swimming beach that had public restrooms, and we would often take bathroom breaks there. We would pull up to the shore well away from the marked swimming area, and we'd disembark to use the facilities. One day, as we pulled up, I noticed a lady on a lounge chair, sunbathing on shore near where we pull a boat up. I stayed about 50 feet away from her, still about 250 feet away from the swimming area, as I slowly maneuvered the boat towards shore at idle. As I got close, she stood up and glared at me, while my kids whispered to me that they knew her as a mean lunch lady from their previous elementary school. As I brought the boat up to shore, this woman started yelling very loudly that I was breaking the law. I smiled as friendly as I could and said, "Really? What law?" She continues yelling, saying that I was driving a motorboat in a swimming area. I pointed to the marked swimming area about 250 feet away and said, "You mean that swimming area?" To which she replied, "Yes." I told her that I never entered or even got close to that swimming area and that my boat was right now as close as I got. She said the law prohibits boats from pulling up to any shore. Well, how are you supposed to get in and out of your boat then? And now she was calling her son, the deputy, who was going to get me in trouble. At this point, I was starting to enjoy this a little because I thought for sure her son, the deputy, would tell his mom that she couldn't stop me from pulling my boat up to shore. I stood nearby as she calls someone, assuming her son, on her cell phone. She then reads the person on the phone my boat hull number. It's like a license plate for boats. Then she says, with a smirk on her face, "My son is going to order you from the lake right now." And what happens next shocks me. This woman calls me by my full name. Then she hands me the phone. Now, I should say this. What had just happened is a clear violation of the law. In my state, it's known as a lien violation, and officers and deputies are very often charged with this crime. I read about it several times a year. If an officer uses his police computer to divulge personal information, say a deputy tells his mom the name of a registered owner of a boat that she's having a disagreement with, it's a crime. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Every cop knows this. So I take the phone. I immediately ask, "Who is this?" I hear, "This is Deputy so-and-so of the County Sheriff Office," and I immediately interrupt him and say, "Deputy, do you know what a lien violation is?" Several seconds of silence. "Deputy so-and-so," I use his real name of course, "are you still there?" He says, "Yes." So I say it again. "Deputy, let me ask you again. Do you know what a lien violation is?" He stammers out a reply about boat hull numbers and public records or something. I say, "Nope, that's not what a lien violation is. Since you don't know, do I need to remind your supervisor what a lien violation is?" Again, silence. I then said, "Tell you what, I'm going to hand this phone back to your mother, then you're going to tell your mother to leave this beach right now. Then we can all forget this ever happened. Understood?" Long silence. "Understood?" He does a long exhale and says, "Yeah, okay." I hand the phone back to his mother. She whispers into the phone for a few seconds, then angrily snaps her phone shut. Without making eye contact, she packs up her stuff and is gone. I thought about reporting him anyway, but technically I was the victim, yet I wasn't feeling victimized at all, so I just let it go. Only one other time did I see the lady at that beach again, and as she saw me, she immediately packed up her stuff and left again. Edit. All citizens have rights, even cop citizens. When off duty, I have a right to not report something that makes me a victim if I so choose. But why? But now you're a hypocrite. Nope, we can all choose or not. We all have rights, and I will happily prosecute anyone when I'm truly victimized. I get to make the call. You really do need to have a conversation with his supervisor. He was attempting to use his position in law enforcement illegally. Yeah, I'd still report the deputy for misuse of the system. Might as well make an example out of him so others know not to mess around. Am I the jerk for taking a day off for myself without telling my husband? My husband, 38 male, and I, 40 female, have been married for 8 years and we have a 4-year-old son together. I work for a regional park district managing the outdoor recreation and education program. Basically, I work outside 90% of the time. The summer is by far my busiest time of the year and I routinely work 6 days a week. If I can make it work, I'll take a day off during the week to offset my hours because our weekend events are the ones I'm most needed at since they're bigger. I'm salaried, so don't get overtime. This is not new. I've been in this position since before my husband and I got married. He knows how busy I am this time of year. Since our son was born, my husband has gotten increasingly grumpy during this time of the year because he obviously has to be responsible for our son during the weekends when I work. We fought about this a number of times because he feels like I should talk to my bosses about getting other people to take over some of my weekend events so that he doesn't get stuck with our son by himself every weekend. I feel like he needs to suck it up because this is nothing new to anyone, and it's only a small portion of the year that my schedule is like this. His argument is that there is nothing he does that leaves me parenting by myself for similar amounts of time, and that there needs to be more of a balance in that area. This past weekend, I had events on both Saturday and Sunday, full 8-hour days and outside in the heat. By the time I got home, both nights I was exhausted and just wanted to take a shower and go to sleep. I tried to watch a movie with them on Saturday night, but fell asleep on the couch. Last night, I crashed by 8 p.m. This morning, I told my husband I was going to work from home for a bit in the morning to offset my hours. But after my husband took our son to daycare and I started looking at emails, I changed my mind to just take the day off and get some rest and maybe do a few things around the house. I must have fallen asleep on the couch because I woke up to my husband making himself lunch in the kitchen. He regularly comes home for lunch because his office is nearby. I asked him how his day was going and a few other questions, and he kept giving me one-word answers. I asked him if he was okay, and he told me he was tired and feels like he hasn't gotten a break all summer, and it's frustrating for him to come home and see me napping when I told him I was going to work from home. I told him I was still tired from the weekend and decided to take the day off. He said he's tired too, and that I need to start doing a better job of taking his needs into consideration instead of just focusing on my own. He said it's not fair to him to work 5 days a week, then be solo parent all weekend, while all I do is work and sleep. I told him that summer is almost over, so my weekends will be free again soon. But all he said was, "Since you're rested now, you can pick up son from daycare. I won't be home for dinner." You're the jerk. Not for the day off. Everyone should get one from time to time. You're the jerk because your husband is 100% parent during every weekend of the summer months, in addition to having a full-time job Monday through Friday. He's asked you to talk to your bosses about getting more people, but you've refused. So I guess this is life for him now. June through August, full-time parent every weekend. Also, all of the household chores on the weekend. Cooking, mowing, etc. You've dumped too much on him, and your answer is basically, get over it. You're the jerk. You don't refute what he said, that there are not times where you are solely picking up all parenting duties for him. He's not complaining about being a dad and parenting. He's upset that you're stretching yourself so thin that you can't be an equal partner and parent, and are unwilling to even ask if it's possible for your responsibilities to be shifted so you can have the schedule your responsibilities require. If you were a man and he was a woman, nobody on this sub would be siding with you. I'm interested to know why you can't and won't try to delegate at work to alleviate some of this stress on your husband. Like, is it an income thing where you are the primary breadwinner and you can't afford to rock the boat at work? If so, how do you help him refill his emotional tank after your busy season? If I were him, I feel pretty taken for granted. Sounds like you're the jerk. You have a family now. You can't pretend you don't just because this is a busy time of the year. It's incredibly unfair to make your husband take on every weekend in the summer because your boss can't figure out how to keep employees, and you won't put your foot down about an occasional weekend. It doesn't sound like Hubs is asking for every weekend, just for you to give a little. You're willing to sacrifice your family for work. Are you willing to do a little of the reverse? You people on this sub are crazy sometimes. Plenty of women have the kids all weekend long, and everyone just acts like it's fine. But when it's a man, it's poor dad can't handle it. It's not like this is a new thing. Dad knew full well what his wife's schedule was when they decided to have a kid. It's not like mom is gone for 15-hour days on weekends. I assume it's a normal 8-hour workday, so dad is perfectly capable of taking care of his kid during that time. It's also only for a few months a year. Not everyone works a normal 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. Dad can deal with it for a few months a year. It's called being a parent. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. I'm just glad we don't have kids, Reddit boy. And so many of these stories solidify my gratitude. Am I the jerk for saying I would stay at my mom's if I had to share a room with the babies? I'm 16, female. My parents split up before I was born. Custody is, I live with my dad most of the time and my mom every other weekend, plus random staying with her if I want to. Recently, my dad got engaged to Hannah, and she and her kids are moving in. Hannah's kids are ages 9, 7, and triplets who are 2. She's widowed, so they live with her full time. This made room arrangements a bit awkward since there's only 3 rooms for the kids to go around. Dad and Hannah talked it over last night without consulting anybody, and Hannah came over this morning to announce with my dad what they decided. Apparently, they want 9 and 7 to each have their own rooms and have me share with the triplets because my room is significantly bigger than the other ones, and I don't stay there full time. I said their plan was stupid. They wanted me to share my room with 3 toddlers. They said they didn't want me to move, but it was the biggest room, so other people should share. I said I didn't care if I switched rooms because the more logical move would have been the triplets in the big room, 7 and 9 share, and I get my own room. I said I'd take the smallest one until I want to move out. They said it would be more work to move my things to another room, and their idea was more practical. They asked why I was so pressed since I don't even live here full time. I said not staying in the room 4 days a month was a sorry excuse to land me with a bunch of toddlers, and if they seriously planned on doing this to me, I'd make the custody arrangements change, and I'd stay with my mom for the most part. I know she doesn't mind because both of them remind me I could stay with her whenever I wanted. This made Hannah cry because she just wants her family to blend together nicely, and apparently I was ruining her plans. This made Dad mad at me, and I'm not allowed to talk to Hannah until she forgives me. I didn't know this meant so much to them, but I'm still saying I'll stay with my mom longer if I have to share a room with the toddlers. But my dad just made me feel a bit guilty. So, am I the jerk? Update. I'm at my mom's house, at least for the weekend, while the adults try to work things out. But my mom said I was welcome to live with her full time, and if I really wanted, we could change the custody agreement. Also, thank you for your replies. I wasn't expecting this to get as much attention as it did. Update 2. Everyone talked, but Dad and Hannah are staying with their decision, and I've decided to move to my mom's long term, and we're gonna switch the custody around, so I'll only see my dad every other weekend, and I'm just gonna sleep on the couch when I'm there. Obviously, nothing is set yet, but that's what we're gonna do, and thanks everyone for being so nice. I'm pretty sure practical, in this context, means it's practical for the dad's fiancé that OP shares a room with her 3 kids so she can take responsibility for them at night and the fiancé won't have to anymore. And she's right, it would be extremely practical from the fiancé's selfish perspective. My ex-girlfriend broke up with me and is now dating my boss. My ex and I broke up around 4 months ago after dating for a little over a year. She was the one who broke up with me, but at the time I agreed that it was for the best, so we ended things on good terms. We're pretty chill now, and we have mutual friends, so we often all hang out together. So things between us are chill and friendly. I work at a research lab at my university, and I just recently landed the position after a pretty long and competitive application process. I met my boss, who's a grad student, and we became buddies pretty fast. He's a really nice and funny dude that knows what he's doing. I see him every day since me and 2 other undergrads work under him and help with his research while he helps with our own. Fast forward about 2 weeks, and I see on my ex's Snapchat story a picture of my boss with a heart emoji. I'm shocked, so I reply to her story asking her who her new boyfriend is, and sure enough, she tells me she's dating my boss. I feign happiness for her, and I don't tell her that he's actually my boss or that I know him in that way. But darn, I felt horrible. I thought I didn't have feelings for her after our breakup, but after seeing her story, I was just hit with a pang of jealousy. Maybe it's because he's a major step up from me. I'm a poor, disorganized undergrad, and he's a successful young talent who has his stuff together. The next day at work, I'm basically on edge the whole day. I would look at my boss, remember that he's dating my ex, and just feel so uncomfortable. The rest of the week was like that too. I stopped joking around with him and kind of just stopped talking in general to him. Now I dread seeing him every day because the fact that he's my boss, so he orders me around, it just makes me feel even worse and more below him. He's got the girl and I've got no one. I still love my job though, and I worked hard to get it, so I'm not planning on leaving. I also feel like a crappy person since my boss has been nothing less of nice and is honestly a great guy. Now I just feel like I should have tried harder in our relationship because she was perfect in every way and I just let it all slip through. The other day she came over to have lunch with him during his lunch break and I saw them laughing together. And yeah, another wave of sadness and jealousy. What do I even do now? How do I stop feeling like this? How should I normalize this situation at work? Update. For the past week, I've been trying to focus on myself and my work and not care about my ex and my boss who's dating her. It's worked pretty well. I started a painting and I'm pretty close to finishing it, and I impressed my boss's boss, the professor who owns the lab, not the one dating my ex, by staying late for 2 days in a row to finish a really difficult experiment. During our lab meeting, my boss's boss shouted me out in front of the entire lab and said he was really impressed by my hard work and dedication. That felt good. As for the situation with my boss and my ex, he found out. Like I mentioned in my previous post, when my ex told me who her new boyfriend was, I didn't mention that he was my boss, so neither of them knew. 2 days ago, my boss and us, 2 other undergrads, were in a conference room discussing a paper when my ex walked in. She came to drop off my boss's wallet that I think he forgot or something. Anyway, she saw me, did a double take, and went, "Jake?" She was definitely super surprised and caught off guard, and my boss was already confused, so I was just like, "Hey, Sarah." She shot me another shocked, wide-eyed look and left. Suffice to say, the rest of the meeting was pretty awkward. The next day, it was obvious that my boss now knew our history. Things just turned so awkward, like he didn't know how to act around me anymore or what to say. Now we're both awkward around each other. He's still nice and all, but things are just uncomfortable between us two now. It's not his fault though. I think that things will get better between the two of us, but as of right now, I actually feel kind of relieved that he knows. Something about how both of us now don't know how to act and what to do kind of makes me feel reassured. Sarah also called me the night that she found out I worked there, but I missed her call and forgot to call her back. It's good though. I've been trying to think of her less and distance myself a bit. But if things continue to remain really awkward to the point where both of our work is affected, I'll consider talking to my boss's boss about switching me to work under another grad student instead. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks for the help. I'm actually glad you didn't answer your ex's phone call or return it. I can't imagine for the life of me any usefulness to that conversation. I mean, did she not know anything about the department you were in at school, or the likelihood of seeing you if she kept her dating pool there? In my humble opinion, you really demonstrated an ability to be above drama by not immediately telling your boss or Sarah about your previous relationship. And I'm super stoked that instead, you just focused on your work and got praised by your boss's boss. Good for you. OP. Actually, me too. We're still friends and all, but I think I really need to put some distance between us and focus on myself for now. I'm glad I missed the call too. I applied for the job after we broke up and never mentioned it to her, so I guess she never found out. Am I the jerk for leaving my wife at a party and going away solo when she was making me late? I'm 28. My wife, who's 27, graduated medical school in 2021. They had a graduation party since everyone had had their shots, but it was still pretty small due to what was going on at the time. You could only bring one guest and you had to socially distance. Her medical school decided to invite all of the lockdown graduates to this year's graduation event. They planned this all out pretty last minute, only giving 3 weeks notice that it was happening. But my wife was very excited about it. She gets paid crumbs and works long hours as a resident, so I get why she wanted to relax and have fun. The issue is that I had a huge work trip the next day that had been planned for months. I don't travel a lot for work, so they went all out to make this comfortable, and I had a lot riding on it. If I didn't do well, I would probably get fired, but if I did do well, there were 2 open positions I could be promoted to. My wife wanted to come with me, so my company comped her flight and we were going to make a vacation out of it after my presentations. We were flying out the night of the party to ensure I made it on time for the meetings the next day. I told my wife we shouldn't go to the redo event since we had to fly out and since it would be very tight. She insisted we go since the party started at 3 p.m. and our flight left at 9 p.m., but the event was 1.5 hours away from the airport. We made a plan to leave at 5:30 p.m., pack everything in our car beforehand so we could go straight to the airport. But by 5:30, she just started saying goodbye. I told her we needed to leave ASAP, but she said no, we don't have to be 2 hours early for our flight, etc. Around 6 p.m., this guy from med school, who had a crush and asked her out multiple times, grabbed her hand and pulled her off to another table. I went up to them and told him he needed to back off. He said I needed to treat her better and let her enjoy herself. I looked at my wife, but she just ignored me. At that point, I decided I wasn't going to try and convince her to stick to her word anymore. I told her I was leaving for the airport and I took our car. There was a ton of traffic and security was a mess, so I only had a few minutes to spare before getting on the plane. She texted me horrible things. I never responded or engaged, but she kept texting me how I was horrible and don't understand what it's like to have a lockdown ruin a huge moment for you. I disagree. She still had a graduation party. It's not my fault she didn't get to dance. I don't see what the huge deal was, and conversely think she didn't understand that this would cost me my job if I missed the flight. And since I make up around 70% of our income in a high cost of living area, we would essentially be homeless. We've been on tense terms since this happened in June. She brings it up a lot and is recommending therapy so I can learn how to behave in a marriage. But I don't think we need it since she's the one who caused this whole problem in the first place and should take accountability for that. But am I way off here? Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You needed to catch the flight and not risk your job. She was being immature, wanting to party without managing her time. Not the jerk. You told her you were leaving for the airport. She didn't respond and didn't come. You guys also made detailed plans about when to leave and why. Your work trip is financially important, and if you do end up going to therapy together, you'll probably find that your side gets more support than you're expecting. She was also pretty disrespectful by ignoring you when some dude made snide comments about how you treat your wife. I would expect her to shut him up, no matter how she felt, because that's how people behave in a marriage. But you really should respond if she texts you nasty stuff. Even just a, "We will have to talk about this later. I'm in a hurry to get on a plane. I couldn't wait and missed the plane, and I'm hurt that you disregarded our careful plans in order to party." Not the jerk. You compromised. She just did whatever she wanted, regardless of what she promised, and uncaring of any bind she was putting you in. Does she have a history of blaming others when she's in the wrong? If it's habitual, I'd leave. If this is the first time, do marriage counseling to see if having a third party back you up gets through to her. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I know Reddit is infamous for jumping to the divorce solution, but bruh, if my spouse ever disrespected me like that at a party, it would be so over. I overheard my boyfriend making fun of the gifts I gave him. It's making me rethink about our relationship. I, 22 female, have been dating my boyfriend who's 27 male for 4 years now. His birthday was a few days ago. I always struggled with giving gifts to him because he's way more financially stable than I am. I'm saving up for my post-graduation degree, so money has been tight now. I decided to be creative about my gifts. I always had interest in arts and do-it-yourself projects. My boyfriend likes the stuff I make, crochet, etc. My boyfriend likes the stuff that I make when I crochet. So, I made a crochet doll of both of us hugging. The only expensive thing I got for him was a sunglass, which was $50. Other than that, I made a scrapbook of all of our pictures together and some boxes filled with love notes. That's all I could afford right now. But when he saw those gifts, he told me that they were the best gifts someone had ever given to him. I never had any indication that he disliked them. Yesterday I was with him. My laptop broke down, so I borrowed his for a school project. He was logged into his Messenger account. I saw a message pop up from his friend, Becky. Becky said something about, "Please tell me you threw away that hideous doll." I know I'm wrong for snooping, but curiosity got the better of me. I saw chats from him and Becky making fun of the gifts that I gave him. He called me cheap and grandma because who in this generation does crocheting? It's not like he can use it in real life. He even disliked the sunglasses. Becky was instigating it even more. She had some of the most cruel comments, and my boyfriend was agreeing with her. I also saw how much he praised Becky for giving him a VR gaming set. I felt so betrayed. Sure, my gift was cheap, but I spent time making it and organizing them. I did confront him about it. He just said I'm being dramatic over a gift. I've never been so hurt in my life. I don't know if what I'm feeling is right or not. I'm rethinking our relationship now. Like, he knows that the money is tight for me right now, but he claims if I love him enough, I would sacrifice a bit just to shower him with gifts. Taking out hundreds of dollars out of my savings just for one time wouldn't have been a big deal. Am I wrong here? Definitely time to reevaluate this relationship. Him talking smack on you and your gifts was wrong and uncalled for, especially being together 4 years now. And instead of defending you to his friend, he joined in on the crap talking. Is that the kind of guy you want to be with? OP, that's where I'm torn. I was not really in a financially better position when I met him. He let me borrow his car countless times. He even paid for some of my stuff when I was jobless during lockdown. I feel guilty because I can't give him back the same level of support that he's given me. I try to understand his side. I mean, in his mind, he must be thinking, I had supported her so much, but she doesn't show me the same level of support. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to feel sad about it because it was cheap. His friends gave him gifts that were somewhat expensive for my standard. He must feel humiliated by my gifts. Did you call your handmade crochet project cheap? How could you say that? As a crocheter, I know we can underprice our work, but crocheting cannot be replicated by machine. Every single crochet object has to be made by hand. You really need to look online how much crochet sells for. I'll give you a hint. These dolls get paid by the hour. They're sold so highly because of the expertise and time spent on these precious items. If you take 3 hours at a minimum wage, you're looking at $21. Does that seem high? Maybe depending on the person, but a true art enjoyer understands why. Respect yourself and your craft. OP. I mean, it took me 2 weeks to complete it. I know it's too long, but I never had the time. Also, the materials were free because my aunt gifted me a new set of crochet materials last year. I don't crochet that often, but I do make a lot of handy crafts made from scraps. So in that sense, it is cheap because I didn't buy all of the things myself. Update. I broke up with him. That's it. I know my worth. I've talked to him about my feelings, and he did apologize for being a jerk, but it wasn't enough. We argued. We fought a lot, but the conclusion is that he treated me like crap even after I poured my heart into making those gifts. I asked him why did he praise Becky's gift way more than he did mine. He told me because Becky's gift was way more expensive. I asked him if he was cheating on me with her. He lashed out and screamed at me and said no. I know the truth now, even if he doesn't say it out loud. I packed my stuff and left his place. I'm staying with a friend of mine. I've been crying a lot. My friends have been really supportive of me. I asked him to give me back the doll because he's not worth having my dolls. I will sell this one and hopefully one day make dolls for someone who appreciates them. I'm really sad and lonely now. I really loved him. I pictured our life together. I even drew an anime version of us and our future kids. He did try to call me and tell me that I'm making a huge mistake. All his friends were trying to get us back together, even that jerk Becky. I blocked all of them. I guess you can say I got the sweater curse because last year I knitted him a sweater and after 1 year we're broken up. I didn't believe in the sweater curse until now. Edit. For those who don't know, sweater curse is a superstition that when you knit a sweater for your significant other, you will break up or divorce within 1 year. But it's a myth as far as I know. Why is it that whenever someone breaks up with someone, the other person they got broken up with is the one that says, "You're making a big mistake"? Like, no dude, the mistake was that I didn't break up with you sooner. Poor OP. Handmade gifts are always so thoughtful and unique. I hope she'll find someone that will appreciate her. Am I the jerk for being embarrassed with my cheapskate boyfriend? We've been dating for about 4 months, and mostly it's been good. He's cute, smart, and very successful. The only downside is that he's almost addicted to buying things that are on sale or have coupons, despite being a VP at his company. I'm not talking about sometimes or even most of the time. I would be alright with that. He never buys anything at full price, ever. He plans his cooking around what's on sale that week at the grocery store. All of his clothes were bought on sale or clearance, even his socks and boxers. Last week, we were at my friend's house for dinner, and she commented on his shirt. He proudly said that he got it on clearance last year for $20. I was mortified. Lastly, we don't go to any restaurants unless he finds a coupon or they're running some kind of a special. Things came to a head last night when we went out for dinner. He had a digital coupon for buy one get one free. For some reason, the restaurant's computer didn't recognize the deal and the poor cashier couldn't make it work. We were holding up the crowded line because he refused to pay for both dinners. Finally, the cashier called the manager, but he was busy somewhere else in the restaurant. While we waited, the people behind us were getting annoyed. I was so embarrassed. I left him standing in line by himself and I went to the car. We argued the entire drive home. We were supposed to go to the movies because he got free tickets, but I wasn't in the mood, so he dropped me off. We haven't texted today at all. When I talked to my friends at brunch, they didn't see a problem with it, and I found it frustrating that they didn't understand how embarrassing it is. Am I the jerk, or is this normal? He never buys anything at full price, ever? What's so terrible about that? As long as he's never rude or demanding to retail staff, he's smart to chase the best deals on everything. He proudly said he got it on clearance last year for $20? You were mortified? Why? I doubt your friend thought any less of him for it. And the fact the computer didn't recognize the deal wasn't his fault. He had the coupon. He ate there with the expectation that the coupon would be honored. As long as he was patient and not rude to the cashier, he did nothing wrong. If the people standing behind him were annoyed, they should have been annoyed at the restaurant management, not him. Overall, this sounds very much like a you problem, not a him problem. And calling him a cheapskate? You've been dating 4 months. I can't see this relationship lasting if you continue with that attitude. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. I spent most of the post thinking not the jerk, but you're really judgy of him. There's nothing embarrassing about mentioning a good deal on a shirt that someone complimented. Also, I missed the part where you were so embarrassed that you just paid the bill instead of walking away. No jerks here. You guys are just incompatible. He's not wrong for wanting to save. You're not wrong for not wanting to hold up a gigantic line of people for a coupon. Just different life approaches. And you will drive each other nuts with this if you don't discuss and come up with a compromise. Maybe his clothes and groceries are free for all couponing, but occasionally dinners out can be full price. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know. There's two types of people in this world. Those who like to save money and those who like to waste it. I ruined my boss's life. A few years ago, I worked for a couple of months in a pastry shop. To work there, my boss promised me 8 hours a day except Mondays, half day, and Thursdays closed, and €700 a month. Obviously all off of the books. Although I had some resentment about working off the books, I accepted anyway because I needed some money. The first day of work, I was in there for 11 hours, from 5:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., and then from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. I thought it was normal since it was my first day, even if in reality some doubts came to me right away because all the others had been there as much as me, and for them, it was certainly not the first day. The situation continued to be this, ranging hours from 10 to sometimes 13 hours a day. Furthermore, for 2 weeks in a row on Monday, the day which we were supposed to only work in the morning, we instead worked with the schedule of the other days. At the end of the month, I asked for my well-deserved salary, and my boss got angry, telling me that I was only thinking about money, when in reality, I hadn't even asked him to pay me for the multiple hours of overtime. He then told me that he would pay everyone at the end of the first week of the following month. The following day, after working as usual for 11 hours, at the end of the shift, he called me aside, telling me that since I had been presumptuous, I had to show up for work on Thursday, even though it was my day off. Obviously, I got angry and replied that I had worked much longer hours than those agreed upon, and that I would not show up for work on my day off, and so I didn't. Thursday came around and I didn't show up, ignoring hundreds of calls from my boss and his wife. The next day, I showed up for work regularly and was severely reprimanded and then sent home for bad behavior. He told me that we would meet on Sunday to give me the money and I didn't have to show up again, which I already wasn't going to. So Sunday arrived and he showed up with €300, telling me that I had done little this month and that I hadn't been respectful towards him and his business. I got very angry and also went to call my father, who was waiting for me in the car. The two almost came to blows. So I took my father and we left, saying it wasn't over there. I kept in touch with some of my colleagues with whom I had established a good relationship with and who were also working for him under the table. They told me that the next day, he had badmouthed me by saying that I was a person without any form of respect and dignity. They had witnessed the scene the previous Friday and were speechless. They thought I had to do something and not let him walk all over me like this, and they were right. So I decided to do something that no one had ever had the courage or the will to do. I went to finance to denounce the fact that he had made most of his employees work illegally and that he exploited them by underpaying them. Obviously not alone, but with my colleagues, who were also tired of this, to support me. So we decided on a day and time for a pop check and waited. The agreed day was Saturday morning from 9 to 10, the day and time when there was usually more workload. It goes without saying that, contrary to what is thought of in Italy, sometimes justice works, and that day, finance, with a surprise check, discovered the whole situation and immediately closed the business. Subsequently, the owner, as well as my former boss, was investigated and sentenced to I don't remember how many years in prison. The business was seized, and now his family is having to pay more than €1 million in tax evasion for other reasons, related to false receipts and other things that I don't quite understand. My husband of 16 years is having a baby, and it's not mine. I, 46 female, have lived with my husband, 48 male, for over 20 years, married for 16, and we have 2 kids who are 16 and 9. 1 year ago, he decided that he had had enough of his family life and went to live with his parents for some time. He was behaving like a bachelor for the entirety of his stay with them, found a girlfriend, and was drinking all the time. He also spent a lot of his time playing games with friends on his computer. 1 year ago, he informed me that he found a girlfriend and was ready to move out of our apartment and cut ties, although he didn't quite do that. He left me, making close to minimum wage, to care for our 2 kids, and also left a collection of unpaid bills going back months. After that, I fell into a depressive episode that lasted 2 months, and my 2 close friends managed to get me out of it. About 3 months after he left us, he came back. Well, not really. He started coming to our city, hanging out with the kids again, and also with me, inviting me out for drinks and dinner. All was going well, and my 16-year-old went on a week-long trip with him. For a while, all was going well. He said that the girlfriend was a lie, and he just needed some time away to clear his head. Last night, I sent him a "good night, love you" text as I usually do, but in the morning he replied with, "I don't deserve your love. I'm about to become a dad again. I'm sorry." I later called him to ask what he meant by that, and he told me that he has a girlfriend in another country who's pregnant with his kid. She plans to keep it, and he wants to cut ties with me and our kids to care for that kid. I don't know what to do. I requested divorce, but he declined, saying he wasn't ready for that. Can anyone give me advice regarding this situation? Can I divorce him anyways, even though he doesn't want to? Is there any other way I can secure payment for my kids, since with only my job, I can barely make ends meet for the basics? I do some odd jobs here and there, but it's not enough. Speak with an attorney ASAP. He doesn't want a divorce because he doesn't want to help with the kids. File for divorce and request child support and alimony. Even if you guys are split up, why isn't he financially contributing to your kids' needs? He doesn't get to just up and leave and have you deal with everything. If he wants to leave, then adios, but he has to financially support and assist. You need to talk to someone to take the next steps. Ask the friends that helped you before to navigate the lawyer process with you. Forget that guy. He's a loser. My neighbor keeps letting her kid trespass on my land, so I called the police. I, 26 female, live in England. I own my own home and understand that I'm fortunate, but I also worked hard for it. Any money I received or earned while working part-time till graduation went into my savings account. Most people on my street are social housing tenants. I'm still determining what that is, but they've explained that you're eligible for this scheme if you're on a low income. It's more secure than the private sector as you mostly get assured tenancies, even though they are different tenancy types. For a while, I got on well with my next-door neighbors, Emily and Ben. They also have 3 kids who are 13, 9, and 4. But soon I started experiencing a lot of problems from next door. I work from home often, and I could hear shouting next door consistently. Ben is 5'11", 145 kilograms, and quite loud and intimidating. Alexa, what is 145 kilograms in pounds?
145 kilograms is about 320 pounds.
And quite loud and intimidating, and I constantly heard their kids screaming. I had to ask them to lower their voices daily, and I even explained that I work from home. The next set of problems revolved around their 13-year-old son. I spotted him climbing over a wall to get into my garden to get his football back, which at first I just ignored. Then after it happened 10 times, I finally decided to speak with his parents, and I can't remember what I said entirely. Still, it was something like, "Hey, I just wanted to have a word as I've seen your son trespass 11 times to get his ball from my garden. I would appreciate it if you could get him to stop as he's trespassing, and if he just came around to the front and knocked on my door and asked for his ball back, I would be happy to collect it for him." The neighbors apologized and said they would make sure their son doesn't do it again and that he knocks. A few days later, their son did it again while I was in my lounge. I walked into my garden, which made him jump, and spoke with him. I told him I had seen him trespass to collect his ball on various occasions. I told him I had talked with his parents and that trespassing is a crime, and I would appreciate it if you would just come to the front door and knock in the future. He didn't say anything and just went back into his garden. I informed his parents, and they apologized, but it continued. I got fed up with it and decided to invest in some security cameras. I wrote a letter to residents on my road to give them a week's notice that security cameras were being installed at my address, and it will cover my entire garden, and it will also cover my doorway. I also wrote that I'm getting a Ring doorbell camera. After installing the cameras, I thought it would stop the kids from trespassing, but it continued. I saved the footage, filed a police report against the son for trespassing, and sent all of my evidence to the cops. I knew there was a strong chance that nothing was going to happen, but I just wanted the son to have some responsibility. When my neighbors found out, they were furious with me, and since then, our relationship has soured. My siblings found out about it, and they think I'm a total jerk for this. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. You sound like an awful person to have in the neighborhood. Calling the cops on a kid getting his football? Also, why did you put in the part about the council houses when it has no relevance at all? Admit that you feel better than these people. Low-income housing isn't a scheme. It keeps lower-income people, usually families, from being homeless. Legally, you aren't the jerk, but as a neighbor, you really are. This kid sounds like he has a rough home life and is just getting his ball out of your garden. He probably doesn't want to talk to any adults in his life at all, much less a guy who keeps complaining about him to his parents. If he's not wrecking anything in your garden, you're the jerk for making his life harder. Why do you put negative connotation to the word scheme? Scheme is a system. Social housing is a scheme. Or there might be some discrepancy between US and UK understanding of the word. It is a US and UK difference. In the US, the word scheme definitely has negative connotations. It's a kid in his ball. Good lord, lady. When I was 10, I was bigger than when I was 9. I hit a ball straight into Mr. Russo's sedan, cracked a headlight, furthest I ever hit a ball. I was so proud for about half a second. I waited for him, came to him and said, sorry, not to tell my dad, and I would pay for it. This Vietnam Marine with a glare that would scare Medusa looks me dead in the eye without a hint of emotion and says, no more hitting in this direction, bat the other way, which made sense given the layout of the neighborhood. Never spoke about it again. Fast forward 25 years, and I see Mr. Russo outside when I'm visiting my parents for a month. We chat. One day I asked him about the headlight, and he said something I'll never forget. Want to be a good neighbor? Don't ever be the reason a kid feels like they can't have fun in their neighborhood. And never give out crappy Halloween candy. You're the jerk. My wife told me that someone else is her soulmate. My wife, M, met her best friend, Chuck, back in high school. They became close friends, and Chuck came out to M. M was supportive. A year or so later, Chuck told his parents, and long story short, they kicked him out, and Chuck ended up living with M and her parents for the rest of high school. M and I started dating after college, and she told me all about Chuck and how close they were, and how he was like a brother to her. I met Chuck, and we got along and became friends. He's a great guy. At the time, Chuck was dating a guy. They ended up moving in together about the same time that M and I got engaged. M and I have been married for 5 years now. I'm a project manager, and I took on a year-long project in another city. I have to leave at 5:30 a.m. every morning and get home around 6:30 p.m. M and I had a long talk about my job before I took on this project. We knew it would be a sacrifice for me to be working so much, but I'm getting more money than I ever thought I would. After this project, we can pay off our student debt and start trying to have a baby. We both agreed the money was worth it since it's only 1 year. That year will be up in late November. In March, Chuck caught his boyfriend cheating. He was devastated. M immediately told him that he could move in with us. I was fine with him moving in, but was not happy that M didn't even discuss it with me first. Chuck was pretty broken up, and M was giving him lots of love and attention. I was fine with it because I know how much she loves him and he did need her. I also did my best to support him and make him feel loved as well. For a while, this was fine, but as time went on, M has continued to pour all of her attention into Chuck. Sometimes I get home from work and neither of them are there, and I found out that they went to a movie or out to dinner together. I don't think that there's anything romantic going on between them, but it has been annoying that I get left out of all the plans. The past few weeks, several things have happened. The three of us went to a party and someone joked about Chuck being our third wheel, and M said, "Chuck is not the third wheel." I said, "What?" And she said, "I've known Chuck longer than I've known you." A week or so after that, M and Chuck went out dancing one night. I had to work the next day, so I stayed home. I woke up at about 3 a.m. and M was not in bed. I went and found her and Chuck cuddled up on the couch, asleep with the TV on. Both of those things made me uncomfortable. I also realized I had been working so much, I was just sort of letting M and Chuck plan everything, and I had not planned a date night in a while. I decided I needed to be more active, and so I planned a date night for last Friday. When I first told M, she was excited, as we have not been on a date, just the two of us, in a while. Friday, I got home at 6:30, and M and Chuck were not there. I took a shower and got ready. About 7:15, I called M, as we had reservations for 8. She answered, and when I asked where she was, she said her and Chuck had gone shopping and were getting some dinner. I was kind of stunned and asked her about our date. She laughed and said, "Oh, I forgot. Oh well." And that was that. She didn't even invite me to join them. I've tried to never be controlling of M or tell her what to do. I also tend to shut down when I get angry. When M forgot our date, I was mad, so I didn't say anything right then and there, but I knew I needed to address how I was feeling. So later that evening, I told her we needed to talk. I had written down some things so I could stay focused. I started by saying that I do love Chuck and he was always welcome in our home, but that I felt like our marriage was suffering and we needed to work on us. M blew up. She thought I was attacking Chuck. I guess I didn't word things well, and she started defending him and coming at me. We have never had a big fight before. We always talk and work things out. I was stunned that she was attacking me over this. She said some really awful things. Then she said, "Chuck is my soulmate, and you just have to get used to that." I just shut down. I didn't even know how to process that. I love M more than anything in the world, but in that moment, I realized that she loves Chuck more than she loves me. I thought M and I were soulmates, but to hear her say that she considers someone else her soulmate has been devastating. I don't remember the rest of the talk. She huffed off after a while and slept on the couch. Her and Chuck left together on Saturday and were gone for most of the day. When they got back, she's acting like nothing ever happened. On Sunday, she even made a small joke and batted her eyes to me, something she does when she's flirting with me. Normally I love it, but this time it just made me sick. I told her this was a busy week at work and I was just going to stay at a hotel near the job site, something that I've done a few times before, so I haven't seen her since Sunday night. I don't know what to do. Typing all of this up has made me realize I'm really burnt out with all of this travel. Maybe I checked out too much and haven't given her enough attention. But how do I move forward knowing she will never love me as I love her? Minor updates. Seeing a bunch of comments from women who say that they have more than one soulmate has given me hope. To me, you only have one soulmate, but that's not a word Em or I have ever really used, and I just really hope that she means it different than how I took it. We've been texting back and forth some this week, and we spoke on the phone last night. It wasn't anything big. She just called and said that she misses me and couldn't wait until I got home. I'll be home tonight. I told her we should talk about our fight last Friday, and she agreed and said she hates that we fought and we need to work it out. She said she loves me. We'll be talking tonight, and I guess I'll find out where I stand. Update. When I took the time to think about all of this and type it out, I realized how burnt out I was. Friday morning, I met with my team, and I scheduled some time off coming up soon. I'm in a much better headspace now, knowing that I have that downtime. Em and I had our fight on Friday night. Then I left Monday and stayed out of town all week for my project. Em texted me this Friday and said Chuck was gone for the weekend, so we could spend time, just the two of us, and that she wanted to make up for our missed date. I got home Friday evening, and we agreed to talk before doing anything else. I had written out everything I wanted to say, and she sat there and listened. We talked for a long time, and we each went back to some things to get clarification, so I'm not going to try and replay everything we said, just the main parts in the way that makes the most sense. I told her how I didn't like her joke about me being the third wheel, and how much it hurt that she forgot our date, and then how crushed I was that she said Chuck was her soulmate. There were some other little things too. When I was done, she said she was sorry, and she was wrong for saying those things. She said I'm not the third wheel, and I am her soulmate, and she asked if she could explain why she had said what she did. When Chuck's parents first kicked him out in high school, he was really in a bad place. He told Em's mom, and they got him help. So when Chuck called in March about his boyfriend cheating on him, Em had freaked out and was afraid that it could be a repeat of what happened last time. She said she felt like she needed him close so she could watch him and keep him safe. I had made a comment about how for the past 6 months, it seems like her and Chuck were living their best life together, and she said that she's been miserable this whole time, that she's been on the verge of a nervous breakdown. After our fight, she knew she was wrong and realized she needed to get help and let it go. She talked with Chuck, and he promised that he was a stronger person than he was in high school. They agreed it was best if he moved out, both to give Em and I time to work on us, and so Em wouldn't be obsessing over when he was coming and going. Em wanted to talk to me last Sunday, but I had said I needed time and she wanted to give me space. It was a long talk with lots of tears. She apologized a bunch of times. She said she was so concerned with Chuck's mental health that she attacked me because she thought I was going to make him move out, and she was lashing out. She acknowledged that she hurt me and said she loves me and she wants to work on herself and find ways to deal with her fear and worry in a healthy way. We've never really had a big fight before, and we both agreed we could have handled it better. Her by not lashing out, and me by not shutting down. We agreed to start couples counseling to help us learn how to disagree in a more healthy way. We were both emotionally drained after the talk, so we just ordered some food and stayed in. We cuddled in bed to watch TV, talk, and just be together. We've missed each other a lot these past few months, and it was really nice to just hold her. The next day, Saturday, we went on a date. We went to breakfast, went shopping, saw a movie, and even got pedicures together. Several times throughout the day, she would just stop and look at me and say she had missed me and she was so sorry she had pushed me away. Today, Sunday, we called Chuck, who was staying with another friend. He said he was sorry he had caused so much stress for Em and me. He acknowledged he had been focused on himself and not even realized that we weren't doing well. He said he loved us both and is so grateful that we let him stay while he was getting over his breakup. He's looking at a few places and plans to be out in the next week or two. He did offer to move out right away, but I'm okay with him staying a little longer. I think having a plan in place is the most important thing. Our relationship took a hit, but we love each other and we're going to work on it. We set some boundaries and also agreed to always make each other our top priority. I have a few months left on this project, but we're going to make it a point to go on a proper date at least once a week and reserve some cuddle time on the weekends. Thank you to everyone who replied or sent me a message. I got some really good advice. I'm hopeful this experience will make us better and make our relationship stronger. I'm okay with this outcome. I totally see OP's side. I totally see where his wife overreacted and explained, but did not excuse her actions. But what I don't see is how Chuck just lived with two completely miserable people and thought it was all sunshine and rainbows. It kinda sucks that it was OP who had to clarify his lack of comfort, and only then did Chuck realize he was taking advantage of his friends. All those women that commented to OP that they have more than one soulmate, I guarantee they would be furious if their husbands ever said that to them. I can't imagine being the Chuck in this situation. Never felt weird staying for so long and taking so much of the wife's time away from her husband? The atmosphere in the house doesn't feel right? Never made the effort to connect with OP in some way? So insensitive, self-absorbed, and selfish. I don't care how good a friend you were or how hurt or in a deep dark place you are. You are a guest and a friend. Behave like one. Be nice to your hosts, including M and OP both. I think OP wants everything fixed, so he's willing to sweep everything under the rug based on a minimal apology. Glad they're going to counseling though, as that may actually help them long term. Yeah, no. If my partner ever told me another woman was his soulmate, I'm sorry, but there's no apology or context that would ever make that okay. That is a relationship-ending sentence. I've gotta say, I do not like that update. It's very gaslighty. She blatantly doubled down on Chuck being her soulmate, but then completely changes her tune? And the third wheel comment? I'm sorry, but everyone knows a third wheel is the person not in the relationship. And her actions don't seem to fit someone who's worried about their friend. It presents as someone having an emotional affair. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I'm really wondering if wife may have talked with Chuck about whether or not they could be together. Then after Chuck telling her that would never happen, maybe that's when she changed her tone and started apologizing to her husband. But that's just a theory. A Karen theory. Am I the jerk for refusing to babysit the golden child's baby after he disowned me for being adopted? Plus updates. I, 20, female, was adopted when I was 16 by my half-brother and his wife, who were in their late 30s at the time. They already had 6 kids when they adopted me, but it was never an issue. They've treated me like their own kid since they met me and later adopted me. So did all the other kids. Except for one, their golden child who's only 4 months older than me. We'll call him Chad. Chad has always been an insensitive jerk to literally everyone, including our other siblings. He would always fight with us, say mean things to everyone and get away with it. He also had extreme anger issues that would result in broken doors, holes in the walls, etc. He also got to do everything me and my sister were never able to do. He got a free car, goes out at night, etc. When we were still in school together during high school, he got up in front of our whole class and told everyone that I wasn't his sister and I never would be. He then told me in front of his friends that I would never be a part of his family and I should just get over it and walked off. This was not a one and done thing. He would keep doing this up until he moved out and I stopped seeing him and talking to him. Golden Boy once again got the limelight of the family after he got married right after high school, moved out to his wife's family's house, and then had a baby, the first grandbaby. Since this has happened, I've stayed as far away from him as possible, only seeing him for family pictures every year because our mother asks. Recently, I decided to come forward to our mom about what he had said and did because she was upset about how I was distancing myself from him. She basically pulled the, "That's still my kid and it's my first grandbaby" card as the reason she wasn't going to be upset over it. I didn't really care, to be honest. I knew it wasn't going to change her mind on her kid anyway. Out of nowhere, I got a message begging me to come to babysit for them because you're the only one who can deal with these kinds of babies because no one else will. Apparently, they're weaning their kid off of natural feeding and the baby is extremely clingy because of that. And the fact that the mom is a germaphobe, so they've only been held by like 6 people since birth. They know I don't sleep for the most part because I'm an insomniac with ADHD, and I also am not bothered by the crying. For some reason, I can sit for hours with a baby crying and it doesn't bother me. Can't tell if that's a blessing or a curse at this point. My sister's mad at me because apparently they haven't asked anyone else in the family for help but me, and everyone wants to go see this baby. Am I the jerk for not wanting to be around or take care of the baby because its father said that I'm not part of his family? Update. After I posted this, I ended up talking to 2 of my friends from high school. They were actually there during multiple occasions where Chad publicly said all of that stuff. I talked with them for a little while. One of these friends actually came over almost weekly when I was still living at my parents' house, so she firsthand understands my family. We talked, and we all mutually agreed I go this once, see if we can't mend things. If not, I can tell my mom and sister that I tried, but we're done with the whole thing. And if the whole negative thing with my family keeps up, I'll just cut them off for good. So I accepted to go babysit. I went over to Chad's house around 8 p.m. As soon as I showed up, I was greeted by Chad's wife, who was extremely happy to see me. She was tired. You could just tell that she had the I have a 1-year-old face thing going on. She talked to me for a few minutes about how happy she was I came over and how she was glad to be going out with Chad. I kinda just listened to her go on and on before she finally got to the baby. Let's call him Seth. She explained to me his night route, feedings, etc. Nothing too big. Then she got to the end where she starts going on about how he was having crying fits at night and how he wouldn't get to sleep until mid-morning. I was a little on that, but all babies have difficult routes, I guess. She then said they would only be gone for about 4 hours and that they would come home around 12:30, 1 at the latest. After this, Chad shows up from their room, literally starts talking to his wife, looks at me, and then just kind of looks me over for a minute and gives me a small wave and nod before heading out of the house. His wife follows and simply tells me to call or text if I need anything. For a minute, I was just stunned, but went to work to see Seth, which was odd because it was my first time seeing him in person and not in the photos that are hung around our partner's house. In person, he's the cutest little baby ever. He was fine the whole time, and he only cried because there was no one in the room, not because of the weaning. By this time, it was around 11:30, almost 12. I would check the clock every few minutes just to see what time it was. 12:30 rolled around, and I'm like, should I text them? And I'm like, no, let me give them another few minutes until I need to text them. I ended up texting both of them at 1, asking where they were, because they did say they would be home by now. I got no reply from either of them. They finally show up at 3 in the morning. I'm livid at this point, not even over having to take care of Seth for a longer period of time, but just because they never texted me back. Like, what if there was an emergency or something? They walk into the living room, and I'm just like, I texted asking where y'all were at and no one answered. And Chad's wife starts saying that, oh, Chad said it was fine and that it would only be an hour more. And I was just like, you know what, it's fine, whatever, Seth is sleeping. She looks at me all weird and I just rolled my eyes and said, it's not the weaning that's making him cry at night. He gets lonely, he's clingy. Just let him know that you're in the room when he starts crying and he'll go right back to sleep. I started to walk out with my stuff. As I was right about to walk completely past Chad, when I turned around and was like, so you aren't going to say anything to me? After I looked after your kid for like 7 hours now? He snorted at me and was like, no, my wife is the one who talked me into this anyway. Ticked off at this point, I said, so this wasn't, I don't know, possibly a way to be able to apologize for high school? Or maybe all those other times you decided to outcast me from the family? Because I was under the impression that maybe you wanted to patch things up because of you asking me of all people to watch your kid. He sat there for a minute and just said, why should I apologize? Because literally nothing from high school has changed. Man, you really do need to grow up and understand that me and my wife aren't going to cater to you like mom and dad did because you're adopted. You ain't our family and you won't ever be. At this point, I just got in my car and left. I ended up texting my mom about all of it, thinking she would get it in the morning when she woke up. No, of course she had to be awake. She apparently told Chad's wife about the conversation we had about all the stuff Chad had said and done to me in school. Apparently, his wife felt bad because she had an adopted sister too and felt horrible that Chad had done and said all those things. Apparently, mom didn't know about Chad asking about the babysitting thing until now, and she started talking to the wife, who is now upset. Apparently, she thought Chad would have changed since then and didn't think he would act this way that he did when I left. I told my mom that I'm done with him and that if something ever happens with Seth, then I would be there, but I was done with them until that happens. The way things are going, I will most likely be cutting my whole family off because this isn't worth the stress anymore. Update. The first day or two after the interaction with Chad was a bit hectic. Both of them were blowing up my phone, trying to get me to talk to them. Mostly my mom just making excuses for Chad and my sister trying to basically just tell me to get over it. I ended up telling the both of them, in text and over the phone, that I was over it and I would be cutting myself off completely from Chad and his little family. This sparked some anger, but my mother soon went quiet and later my sister. Everything seemed to be going pretty good after that for a while. That was until a week later when my sister showed up unannounced at my apartment, demanding that I take the blessing of getting to be around Chad's sheltered kid when no one else seemed to be able to, basically acting like it was some huge honor that I was asked to babysit. I almost snapped. I wanted to call her a jerk and tell her to get off my property and then not come back because I was just so sick of it, but I didn't. From my doorstep, I told her that if she wants to see the baby so bad, just go over and see it. It wasn't my issue to deal with, and I slammed the door in her face and watched her leave. It's been radio silent now for a while, until earlier this week. I was scrolling on Instagram when I noticed that my oldest brother, the one that I get along super well with, and who has supported me about curing Chad off, his girlfriend and him have posted pictures of their proposal. I noticed the post had been made last week, but no one had told me, not even my mother. I texted my brother's girlfriend asking her about literally everything that was happening. She was surprised because my mother had said she had told everyone in the family about the wedding. She then told me that they would be holding a family meeting at my parents' house to talk about the wedding plans. I said okay. The meeting was for today around dinner time. I showed up and walked into the house and noticed that a lot of stuff was different decoration-wise. My parents had our family photos all arranged around the living room and a few random frames with multiple small photos in them as well. I noticed that they had replaced multiple small photos of specifically me from the frames and replaced them with now pictures of Chad and his wife and my older brother and his girlfriend. What were maybe 6 pictures of me on any of the walls, there were now 2, a baby picture of me and my senior high school photo that are now in the hallway, not even the living room. I ignored it and didn't say anything. After a while, everyone showed up, except for, of course, Chad, who my mom pulled the "he wanted to spend time with the baby" BS. They all started talking about the people plans of the part, aka people who were going to be key parts of the wedding cast. I tried my best to listen and take in all of what my brother's girlfriend was saying. I noticed by the end of it all, my name was literally never added into any of the main plans. I wasn't mentioned at all in the plans. I started to question why I was there if I wasn't going to be in the main plans of the wedding. I was kinda like, why not just send me an invitation then? I went home and texted his girlfriend asking about what had happened at the little meeting. Apparently, my mother had told her that I wouldn't want to be involved in any of the wedding stuff and that it wasn't my thing. She called me unfeminine and that I wouldn't like doing any kind of bridal stuff because I'm not girly. She then said everything was set in stone now. My older sister is going to be a bridesmaid and my little sister is going to be a flower girl. My little brother will be the ring holder and my other little brother and Chad will be the groomsmen. And apparently, my mother also told her that because of what happened with Chad, that I shouldn't be sat at the family table but at a guest table. I will just be another guest at the wedding. I really didn't say anything back because it hurt. It hurt that my mother would say that about me, that I wasn't feminine just because I don't enjoy a lot of girly things in my spare time, that I wasn't going to be able to enjoy doing something like a wedding or be a bridesmaid. I can't believe she would say that about me. To be honest, I don't even know if I'm going to go. The wedding is scheduled for the end of the year. It sounds stupid and petty, but this hurt me. It hurt that I'm being outcasted, most likely due to Chad once again. As I'm typing this, my sister is texting me about how she's helping plan all the bride stuff. Update: Chad's wife is pregnant again. Don't stop now. We've got hours of the best stories waiting for you. Tap here and keep watching. And hey, if you love these, don't forget to subscribe.